to train me forever. It's been just fantastic. So we've heard from just iconic speakers, and now we go to another iconic speaker. This guy means a lot to me because I met him when I was kind of starting, and he was not the new kid on the block. No, he wasn't. He was the new kid on the block. But he was, this wide-eyed photographer that had all these great things, and I started as a hero photographer doing all kinds of. And then he went on to start kicking butt. Sports Illustrated. He did this thing. I'll never forget when I first saw it. I saw it on some social media. This gigafan. And I go, "Oh, this thing is so cool. What is this?" And it goes, "I know this guy. This is great. This is fantastic." And he started this whole thing with the whole gigafan. I mean, when you look at that, you can take an image of an entire a World Series game, and I could find a guy and see his face. That's the kind of resolution you put in these pictures. Just stick together. I don't know how many quick pictures you stick together to make it, but it's amazing, And then he does stuff. Then he went into music, See this iconic photograph of Bon Jovi doing a split in midair with all the things going on backstage. You go, man, it's an incredible photograph. I know that guy. It was unbelievable, And he's always just been such a good, not only a great photographer, but a really great friend. He, always gives me little hints and stuff like that because he photographs pretty. It's impossible to photograph. I can't photograph people. He captures people in such a great way. Whether it's a sports athlete, whether it's a musician, whatever. He's got a plethora of awards. He's got a plethora of all kinds of things. He's a Canon Explorer of Light. All that stuff. Anybody can Google the name and find out. I just want you to know this guy is just a great guy. So, great pleasure to me to introduce the one, the only, David Byrne.
I've only ever heard Ron talk that way about animals. So I'm actually really proud. This is a guy who wants concert tickets. Is what's going on. Thank you, Ron. No, seriously, Ron. I mean, you guys know Ron. He's the best. He, had never touched a camera really. And I was the new kid on the block at the Miami Herald back in the day, and now he's a Nikon ambassador. And amazing. He's gonna tell me how to get to Antarctica. It's the only continent I've never been to. So anyway, welcome. I'm glad you guys are all here. We got a good crowd. It's very, very cool. What I'm going to do now for the next hour or so, hopefully it won't feel like that long, but I'm going to talk about sort of where I've come from and how I've made a career of this, right? Somehow I've made a career, a lot of us in this room have made a career in photography for decades now, which is insane to me, but so nice seeing all my Herald colleagues here. And but I'm going to go through a little bit of where I've been and where I am now and how I got there. And what I like to impart when I do these kinds of talks is really what we all can do to separate yourself from the pack, because that's really what it's about in today's world. There are a lot of photographers now, for better or worse. It's great for camera stores. It's great for people who teach workshops, but it's hard to make a living as a photographer. So I'm going to go through it. My career, literally, you know what? I've got to make one quick change here. I'm going to change this to show these are separate monitors, so I can actually see my little notes here real quick. Give me 1 second while I stop mirroring this. And there we go. Very good. As if I've done this before. Okay, so my career literally started in newspapers. Now, she's not here. I wish she was. But this was taken, if you can't see it, this was taken in, what year was this? 1979. This was in the Miami Herald, probably in the neighbors section. That's a young third grader named David Bergman in the newspaper, taken by Maurice Cohn. Of course, it was Maurice Cohn band. Maurice Cohn. I was at my elementary school, very closely watching the luau take place. Some things don't change, I guess. But so I literally started in newspapers. I was photographed for the paper, and obviously I had no idea what was going on. But I remember thinking how cool that was, right? Like some photographer was there. I must have met her. She came up and got my name. I was a little kid, and I was so fascinated by it because then the next day that picture was in the newspaper. It was very cool. So I had a camera. I started picking up a camera. Didn't really know what I was doing. I had a Canon A1 program back in the day in the 80s. But I was a musician. I played drums. And I went, my first year of college was at the Berklee College of Music in Boston. And I studied music production. I wanted to be a producer. I played drums, but I really wanted to be a producer. And so that freshman year, I had that camera, that A1 program, and I started taking pictures of my friends' bands. I wasn't so much interested in playing. I mean, I enjoyed it. I loved the environment of concerts, and I would take the guys out. This will age me a little bit. That was 1988. This is a band, a bunch of friends of mine called the Metal Dorks. This is not an ironic photo. This was actually a real rock band in 1988, but real hair and everything. And that's what I would do, right? I would bring my friends' bands. We'd walk around Boston, and I'd just take pictures of them. And it was a fun time, and I enjoyed that. And what happened was, I would go to their gigs, and I would start taking pictures. And then the next, a week or two later, after the film developed, I would have little prints made. Remember the little 4x6 prints, and you put them in the albums, and I would have them in my dorm room, and everybody in the dorm would come to our room, and they would want to see the pictures, and then they would offer to buy them. And I was like, sure, $1 a piece, whatever it was, and they would buy them from me. And I thought, that's kind of fun. And that probably started to plant a little seed for like, oh, this is like a real thing that people actually enjoy. So I wasn't gigging with my friends. I was documenting it. So that was super fun. I then transferred back to the University of Miami. Go Kings. Hope we have a bunch of Kings here. And I at least won. And at UM, no Gators in this place. Yeah,
Gators, baby.
We're gonna start a race war here. So at Miami, I was a music major at first. I walked into the school newspaper, Miami Hurricane, which I heard is still around, and the photo editor, still a friend of mine, Mike Roy, was sitting there. I realized later he was never there, but it was just like coincidence that he happened to be there when I walked in. And I said, hey, buddy, I've got a camera. Like, how does this work? And he gave me 2 rolls of Tri-X, black and white film, and said, go shoot this weekend. Come back on Tuesday, 1 o'clock. I'll show you how to process. They had a dark room. And if there's something I like, I'll give you an assignment. And I was like, okay, sure, that sounds fun. I also went to the campus radio station thinking maybe I would be a producer, engineer, something like that. Never went back there. Went back to the newspaper, and I guess he saw something he liked and gave me an assignment. Amy Ellis, who's here, was the managing editor that year, I believe, and became the editor-in-chief. So we go way back. And but because of Amy and Mike, I started shooting for the school paper. And so that was where I got hooked. That's really where I started getting hooked. I sold my drones and I bought lenses and began shooting for the Miami Hurricane. It was twice a week. I think we got $10 a picture or something like that. And it was cool. It was super fun. I started covering Hurricanes games. That year, within the next couple of years, Hurricanes won the national championship. I think it was 89, that championship. So I got to cover all that as a student, as a 19-year-old student. So that was super fun. After college, I started freelancing. First at the AP, I wish Phil Salmon was here. I miss good old Phil Salmon, but he was my first AP boss. And then I got the job at the Miami Herald eventually. So within about 93, 94, I got hired full-time at the Miami Herald, and I became a staff photographer. Now, the thing is, in the mid-90s, we had this brand new thing called digital, right? It was just starting to come out. Most photographers were still shooting film. I was a young kid, so I was like, yeah, I'll try it. Sure, this new tech, whatever. The photographers who'd been there a while didn't really want to touch this stuff. Nope. The quality was horrible, right? Al, I'm sure they offered it to Al. He was like, no way. I'm not doing it. So these cameras had no screen on the back. You literally plugged it in directly into the wall to charge it. The battery was not removable. All you had was a button on the back for a voice memo. That was it. And it was probably like half a megapixel. I mean, it was nothing, right? But I could now by myself go and shoot anywhere in the world. And with a digital camera and a satellite phone, I could transfer pictures back. It used to take 3 people to do that job, right? Because you had to bring people to set up a darkroom. Bill Andrews, who was here last night, used to set up darkrooms and bathrooms in Daytona Beach and crazy places. And now all of a sudden, me alone with a digital camera. I was the only one in the Miami office who was full-time digital. And then we had one guy in Broward, Joe Rinkus, who was here last night. So they sent me to a bunch of spot news assignments. I wasn't really the spot news guy, but big news assignments. I actually got to go to Nicaragua and photograph Fidel Castro. Like, I was a 20-something-year-old kid. It was kind of insane. I did some serious stuff too. This was a hurricane. Which hurricane was this? Hurricane Mitch. It went through. It was horrible. Real hardcore journalism stuff. I know Stephanie was here earlier. Like, she's passionate about that stuff. It's not really my jam. Like, I never really loved doing this. They sent me because I was, it was practical to send me. I could go by myself. It was less expensive, of course. And just myself and a writer could go and document this stuff and really get those pictures in the paper faster than they could before. But I never really liked doing that. So I gravitated more towards sports and music and that kind of stuff. I got to do some other fun stuff. I got a selfie with Bill Clinton. That was fun. That's actually a real camera film selfie. And then, of course, I photographed Monica Lewinsky on the roof of Books and Books in Coral Gables. I don't know if Mitch is around. But I really gravitated more towards the sports stuff. And this is where I found my passion. I mean, I wasn't necessarily a big sports fan as a kid, but I loved the pictures. These kind of action shots, I loved it. And I got hooked on it. I was doing it when I was in school at Miami, and then at the Herald, I got to do it on the biggest stages. I got to do the Olympics and the Super Bowls and all of that kind of stuff. I just enjoyed making these pictures that freeze a moment in time that even you see things sometimes in the picture that you don't always see with the naked eye, right? Those peak action moments. This was my first Super Bowl. Actually, it was the second one I attended, but it was the first one to shoot for the Herald. Last time the Niners won the championship was in Miami, 96 or so, 95. And so I had the front page of that. And then, of course, the Marlins when they won the World Series. And this was amazing for a young kid to get to cover the world and get to see these kinds of things. But one thing I started to learn, getting to the focus of this presentation, one thing I started to learn is that, good action pictures are great, long lens, tight action, that's great. But it's getting easier to make those pictures. The gear was getting easier, right? Not back then. Back then it was still kind of hard. You had to manual focus a lot. You had to load film and do all that kind of stuff. But the gear is making Canon makes such great stuff now, and all the companies do, that it's really hard to make different pictures. So I started to kind of do things a little bit differently. I would try to go different angles. Now, sometimes, to be honest, to be fair, sometimes I was assigned to these spots, right? I was the new kid. They sent me up to the press box to shoot the cover your ass photos, right? So, but I realized these kinds of pictures were different than what anybody else was doing. And so I got kind of hooked on that. So I tried really hard to put myself in unique positions in not the same place that everybody else. Everybody else, when they shoot this, they stand all the way down at the end of the field with a big 600 lens, which I did plenty of times, and you get them running at you, and that's a great picture. But everybody makes that picture, right? Who puts themselves with a wide angle right in the middle of the smoke, and it's a crapshoot, right? You don't know if you're going to make a picture or not. You might not. You might get nothing. It might just be all smoke, and you never get anything. But every once in a while, if the stars align just right and you make that picture, it's high risk, high reward. So I would even do things like covering a NBA playoff game with Michael Jordan against Alonzo Mourning, mid-late 90s. I'm sure the Heat lost badly in this game, but making the normal action pictures. But I did things like setting up remote cameras, and I put a remote on the backboard behind the net where nobody else can shoot, right? And so Sports Illustrated was doing that, but other than that, most newspaper photographers were not doing that kind of thing. So and it's a lot of extra work, right? You got to get there super early. There's a lot of tech involved. There's things that can go wrong, but if you get the picture, it's worth it. I was playing around with multiple exposures. This is on film, in camera, multiple exposure. This is not a digital composite, right? And you have no idea when you're shooting it what it's doing or if it's going to work. But you try these things, right? And these are the kind of things I've done my whole career. This was the last ever game, Panthers game at the old Miami Arena, right? So this was the opening face-off of the last game ever. So I knew I wanted to make something special. This ran on the front page, right? Because it was the very last tip. And I was the only guy up in the rafters. I could have done this with a remote, but I just went up there and did it. This is one of those cases where it's easier to apologize than ask for permission. So later, as I'm coming down, I go, wait, you can't be up there. Oh, I'm so sorry, my bad. I'll never do it again. But I already got the picture. And even starting to do portraits, right? This is not one of my best portraits ever. It's a very simple portrait, but it's Dan Marino. And to be able to do a portrait of Dan Marino, the Herald felt confident enough that they could send me to do a portrait, even though I was kind of known as a sports action guy. Again, they're Jeff Salter, and those guys are going to make Brian Smith's going to make much better portraits than this. But the fact that I could do that and I had that in my toolbox really helps from a business perspective because they could now send me to different things. But then I really, as a musician, I really got into how can I do more concerts, right? And this was kind of like, on the inside, I was like, I got to find a way. And I had been at the Herald now for 5 or 6 years. And I finally learned I can actually propose my own story ideas. That thought had never occurred to me when I was in my early 20s. I just took the assignment they gave me and did the job. But now I thought, I can actually propose something. And I came up with one. Hey, Gloria Estefan, right? She had been in a horrific bus accident. They thought she was never going to walk again. She came back, she rehabbed, and she was doing a big world tour. And I thought, let's do a package on Gloria Estefan. I can go on tour with Gloria and Emilio. And then at the end of that tour, they're doing a big 5 nights at the Miami Arena. We'll run a big story. And the Herald, I don't know if you were there yet, Maggie. I think it was before Maggie. The DOP and whoever was, Roman, whoever approved it, said, sure, good idea. And I was like, oh man. They said yes. Okay, now I got to make it happen, right? So then I had to approach the Stefans, and it took like a couple of months to work the logistics. But before I knew it, I was on the road with Gloria Stefan, and I got to spend a week or two out with them on tour buses, being on the road with Gloria, and I was in heaven, right? That's where I really found my true calling. I loved the environment. I had all access, right? I could go on stage. Normally, if you shoot concerts, you get a press pass, you get 3 songs and you're out. 3 songs in the pit and you're out. That's the normal. You get your picture and you go. I was there with the artists. They knew who I was. They wanted me there. They allowed me there, so I could stand on stage during the show. This changed my life, and it was so much fun. And then after the show, I could go on the bus and photograph. That's Emily Estefan, by the way, who is now a known artist in Miami. I think she's 30 years old or something like that, 25. The cool thing about Gloria, what they used to do is instead of flowers, fans would throw, a lot of times they would throw teddy bears on stage during the show. And what Gloria would do is she would collect them, and her crew would collect them, and they'd bring them on the bus, and Emily would get to play with them after the show. And then the next city they were in, the next day, they would donate them to a shelter, which I thought was the coolest. So they actually took those animals in, and they got the homes for them. But Emily got to play with them too, and I got to document that, right? So that was so. I started to realize, okay, I get to bring people to places they wouldn't get to go, right? I'm the eyes of the public, and they get to see things they would never get to see normally. So I get to do that. You don't get to do a lot of concerts when you're in the newspaper because there's just not that many that come to town, but I would do them here and there, and it was super fun. 2001 came, I actually moved to New York City. Decided to go freelance, moved to New York. Sports Illustrated became a big client. I'm fortunate to have had a bunch of covers. I don't really keep track of how many. I have 13. I've got 13 covers exactly, but probably never again. But nevertheless, that was a fun gig. I had the Super Bowl cover one year, and working for Sports Illustrated was a blast. And I started out kind of doing the same thing that you're supposed to do, right? The long lens stuff, the good action shots. But again, those kinds of pictures were getting easier and easier. By this time, early 2000s, now we had modern cameras and fast frame rates, amazing autofocus, even 20 years ago, amazing autofocus. And those pictures were getting easier and easier to make. Still fun, nothing wrong with that, but getting easier and easier to make. So I was, again, trying to do something different, right? Wide angle sports. Who shoots sports with a 20 millimeter, right? So getting below the basket and trying to make those kinds of pictures. Going up in the stands during the game and making pictures like this. So, and Sports Illustrated, luckily, really cultivated that because they didn't want the same pictures that everybody else had. They were Sports Illustrated. The magazine was a weekly at that time. It came out on Wednesday. So everybody knew the results of the game. You didn't need the game-winning touchdown necessarily. Having that, if it's a beautiful photo, was great. But everybody knew that already. They didn't, their writers, the same thing. They didn't write about what happened in the game. They always had to write about something different. So photographically, we took that same approach. So making pictures that were different and told a different story that the fans didn't already get was really the goal. So they really cultivated that. I'm at an Olympics in Torino, and I went out the day before and scouted this location. And I knew what the sunset was going to look like. So I was ready. This wasn't like a surprise. Oh, look, it's a beautiful sunset. So I knew what it was going to look like. And then you just wait for the orange team to go by, and you're good. But I've always tried to do that. And then as a freelancer, Sports Illustrated was a great gig for a long time. And then I started doing more and more band stuff. I really pushed myself to get to more bands. And it's not easy. Over the years, I sort of just poked my way into more and more bands. And eventually I got to Bon Jovi, and I toured with them for about 8 or 10 years. And the same exact thing that I did my whole career, trying to make different pictures, not just a guy standing in a microphone singing, right? You got to make that picture, of course, but trying to do something different. Bringing the fans somewhere that they don't get to go normally. Who gets to stand on stage in front of 55,000 people at, the Meadowlands? So, with the pyro going off. So that's the kind of stuff I got to do. And then even I traveled with the band. So I got to, and that didn't happen on the first day. That wasn't just like, oh, Bergman's here. He's just going to, you have to cultivate that level of trust. And, obviously the pictures all have to be great. And so I'm constantly pushing and pushing for a little bit more access. There's a fine line between being persistent and being obnoxious. And I know I've probably pushed that line more than once, but once you're in, you're in. And so I got to be a fly on the wall all those years with one of the biggest rock bands in the world. I mean, if you don't know, if you don't still follow Bon Jovi or you don't know who they are, they still play stadiums all over the world. So, being in the hallway as John Bon Jovi just collapses and takes a break is kind of insane. And then again, remote cameras. This is a remote on stage, so doing things like that. We're playing Rock in Rio in front of 100,000 people. You've got to show there's 100,000 people there, right? You can't just make a picture of John Bon Jovi singing into a microphone. So I'm always thinking about what I can do that's different. Why am I here? What do I bring to the table that not everybody else can do? I have a level of access that not everybody has. So how can I use that? Portraits, being able to do portraits. Again, I don't think I'm the greatest portrait artist in the world, but I can light well enough, and I can, make decent photos when I have to. And so being able to do a portrait of Bon Jovi, how many people get to do that, right? And then the last 5 years I spent with Luke Combs. He's, big country artist. We are now playing stadiums as well. You have to do these kinds of pictures. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm always trying to get great expressions straight on. But again, same thing I've always done, trying to get really unique photos. This is the beginning of the show, right when the band comes out, showing people things in a different way. I thought that I wasn't covering sports anymore. I thought I wasn't going to have to deal with the rain. But damn it, now that we're playing stadiums, I have to deal with the rain again. But even in a picture like this, I'm doing something different here. The photographers here all know how do you make this picture. Slow shutter speed, right? That's doing something different. It's easier to shoot with a fast shutter speed. Everything's going to be sharp. Everything's going to be in focus. This is like a 30th of a second shutter speed. So those raindrops really get extended, right? The longer the exposure, the longer the shutter speed, the longer those raindrops are going to be. So trying that's a risk. I shot probably a whole song or two at a 30th of a second, and 99% of the frames are not sharp, right? There's too much movement. But a couple of frames here and there, you get it, and it's worth it, right? Just always looking for something different. So the theme of the day is separate yourself from the pack. As a photographer, that's what you have to do to make a living, right? You can't just shoot the same thing. You can't just be 5% better photographer. It's not enough, right? How do you judge that? How do you quantify that? So you've got to do things that are different. So I've come up with, over the years, I've looking back and like, what do I do? What are the themes of, what are the things that I've done consistently? I've come up with 4 things that I've done that anybody can do, just trying to think through these things about how you can literally separate yourself. Sometimes it is literally separating yourself. The first one is if you see a group of photographers together, what do? Go somewhere else, right? I love my photographer friends, right? Nothing wrong, but I don't want to talk to you during a show or a game. I want to be as far away from you as possible. Sometimes it's physically going somewhere else, right? It only has to happen to you once. It happened to me one time. I was on the sidelines and another photographer came up to me. I just come off a bunch of tour dates. Friend of mine, I'm kneeling down shooting a game. He's standing there. He goes, "Hey, buddy, how was the tour?" "Oh, yeah, it was great. It was very cool." Ah, shit. Right? Something just happened that I missed. So, going somewhere else, not being social. You can be social and timeouts and all that, but sometimes it's physically going somewhere else. So, for example, literally going up, shooting those high angle shots, right? When everybody else is on the field. This is Ohio State, Michigan. Ohio State won the game. They've gone to the national championship. They did beat the Canes. The referees beat the Canes in that championship game. But nevertheless, but I did get some revenge because I made a lot of money off Ohio State that year because this picture ran in Sports Illustrated 2 pages, and Coach Krenzel actually bought a print of this like 6 feet wide, and I charged him double. So anyway, but again, nobody else had this, right? Everybody else was on the field. They couldn't get anywhere near him. They picked Craig Krenzel up for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. You're not going to get this picture from the field. So I was fortunate to be up high, and I was able to 400 millimeter handhold and just make that picture. So doing something different. This is Notre Dame, Penn State, and at Penn State, what they do is on a big game they have what they call a whiteout, right? So they have the student section usually all wear white. So that's over here. That's usually just a swath of white. That's for a big game. This year, I'm shooting the game. I'm by myself for Sports Illustrated, and I'm on the sidelines, and I can kind of see it, but it doesn't really register. And they make an announcement, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first ever White House at Beaver Stadium," right? They had never done this for, I guess, all week long. They had asked people everybody in the stadium to wear white. They had never done that before. So I looked up, I go, "Oh yeah, I could kind of see it," but it didn't look like much. It didn't look like a great photo. So I thought, all right, there might be something here, right? Now I'm by myself for Sports Illustrated. I've got to cover the game. But I took a risk and I went off the field, right? And it takes a while. I had to go out and like run up that stupid spiral thing that goes all the way up to the top of the stadium. I was like, when I got up there, of course, and then once I got up there, I saw the elevator that was right in the corner that I somehow missed on the way up. But nevertheless, once I got up there, this picture, it's not hard to make. I'm not doing anything crazy. It's not a fisheye lens. It's not a cylindrical, blah, 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 whatever. It's not a multi-shot panoramic. Just a 24 millimeter snap, right exposure, snap, wait for the color in the sky, snap the picture. Anybody can make this picture. How many people made this picture? One, right? I'm the only person that made this picture at this game. And guess what? I made a lot of money off this one too. Penn State fans are insane. And I, at least once a month still, this is probably 15 years ago, I still get requests for prints for this photo. So it was the first time they'd ever done it. Now the next year they did it again and everybody did this picture, right? So of course I had to do something different. I actually went and I did it over here and made a wide shot as they ran out of the tunnel. And that both of those pictures ran 2 pages in Sports Illustrated. So always trying to think of something different. And yeah, it was a risk. I gave up like half of that quarter of the game. I missed it, but it turned out to be worth it. Again, Sports Illustrated was great about that, cultivating that, allowing you to do that, take those risks. You know, I always try to go up high. The snow had already stopped. It was still kind of, you know, it wasn't coming down anymore. Pictures weren't great. Go up high and make those pictures. This was way back in the Herald days, right? We're using a fisheye lens, trying to go behind the net, which usually you don't shoot hockey back there. It's kind of a limited position. And just wait for something to happen, right? And every once in a while it pays off. So physically, if you see a bunch of photographers together, that's the first thing. There's no reason to stand next to a bunch of other photographers, right? It used to be me, the Sentinel, the Post, you know, and we were competing. If we're standing next to each other, we're all going to make the same picture. So try to do something different. All right, number 2 is technology. Use technology to your advantage. We have so much great tech now. I'm a Canon guy. I'm an Explorer of Light. They make such good stuff. About an hour, I'm going to do a photo shoot back there with speedlights. They're so easy to use now. They're all radio remote. Back in the day, you know, we had to cable everything together, and it was a nightmare, right? It was really hard to do. You had to really know what you were doing. You still have to know what you were doing, but it's a lot easier from a technological standpoint. This picture looks like a big, expensive commercial shoot, right? I probably should have charged the client more, but it's 2 speedlights. That's it. And I could have done it with 1 speedlight, but I just wanted a little bit more power for recycle time and all that. It's 2 speedlights. You could, if you look carefully, you can see where they are. They're off camera on this side, and you know that's not the sun because if you look at the background, the Empire State Building is being lit from the other side. So unless we have 2 suns in this solar system, in hindsight, I probably should have done it the other direction so it matched the sunlight, right? But at least that's now when I show it, I can prove that it's actually a speedlight. But 1 speedlight, 2 speedlights, super simple, really easy. Again, looks like a nice big commercial shoot with a bunch of assistants and a bunch of big lighting. It's not. Very, very simple. Technology has helped us. I've used speedlights to do all kinds of things. What I will do now, when I go, if I have an artist that's playing a small venue, a club, and there's no lighting, right? Luke Combs is manager. He manages a bunch of other artists. Super nice guy. He's got a bunch of artists. As a business person, as an entrepreneur, I always want to be nice to that guy, right? He manages my, you know, basically he is my boss, basically. So I want to be nice to him. So he's got a bunch of other artists who maybe don't have the budget of Luke Combs, right? They're not playing stadiums. They're playing small venues. One of his artists, a couple years ago, Haley Withers, young, female, singer-songwriter, great artist, great talent. I live in New York City. So she was coming through New York. She was playing a small venue, the Mercury Lounge down in the Village. And small venue. So I saw she was coming through on her social media. I texted the manager, hey, buddy, you know, I see Haley's coming through. If you want, I'll be happy to photograph her. I'm not a big proponent of working for free. It's Luke's manager. It was totally fine, right? I was happy to help him out. I didn't have anything else going on that day. So I said, I'll do it. And he said, sure, that'd be great. Thank you, you know. And now, the problem is, if you've shot at a little club like this, what's the light, right? It's like one red spotlight, like that one back there, and that's it, if you're lucky. And so there's 2 ways to do it. The normal way that most people do is use a fast lens. Use an 85-1.2 or 50-1.4, something like that, and just pray for the best. Hope that you get them when they're in the light, and then make it black and white, right? That's all you can really do. Or you can also use speedlights. Now, before you freak out and say, no, you can't use flash at a club, if you call the club and say, hey, I'm going to shoot tonight, can I use a flash? They're going to say no. But if you're friendly with the band, you know the band, you talk to them ahead of time, you say, hey, I'm going to come shoot. Let me come out during the day when you're doing sound check or whatever. They'll say, yeah, great. I just want to document whatever, take a look at the light, all good. So you go out, you bring your little speedlights with you. We now have speedlights that are wireless and portable and relatively expensive. Actually, I heard the EO5s are on sale. I don't know if that's true, but I'm going to grab a couple before the end of the day if they are. Super inexpensive now. So, and they're wireless. And you can also put little gels on them to change the color, right? They don't have to just be white. So now you can go and you can create your own little light show. So Haley goes for sound check. I show up off to the side, I start setting up my little speed lights, right? So I've got my little these are the old 600 EXs, and put some gels on them. Now I know there are more elegant ways to put gels on flashes, but Magma makes great stuff. But I've used gaffer tape for years. I have thousands of little gels. I have every color imaginable. Gaff tape works great. Magma, I use their bounces and those things, but for gels, gaffer tape will do the trick. So what I do is, I see she's starting to set up. I look around the room. Now, you never want to put a flash on the camera and just blast away. Okay, that's bad, right? That's obnoxious flashing. But I find a spot off to the side. The stage is out there. I find a spot off to the side, and I go over and I use a simple Manfrotto super clamp and a magic arm, and I hook up one of my speed lights with a little warming gel on it off to the side. It's way off to the side. It's not direct. It's just off to the side. So I hook that up, right? This is what it looks like. It's way off to the side. She's just doing sound check. She has no idea. I start testing it. I start looking at it. I want to kill the ambient. I want to, see what it looks like. I'm zooming it in and zooming it out. I want to get it over the heads of the people that are going to be in the crowd, and I get that set up. Then I go on stage. I put one right next to the drum kit with the red gel on it, basically behind where Haley's going to be. I go to the side. I put one off to the side where the bass amp. I talk to the bass player. Hey man, you gonna put beers on here, whatever? No, I'm good. Okay, cool. Set that one up. I only use 3 flashes, right? Pro tip: write down your settings. These are all manual, right? I'm shooting everything manual because the distance doesn't change from the flash to the stage, right? So I want it all manual. My exposure's manual on my camera. My flashes are all not TTL because I don't want it changing frame to frame. I want it every time the exact same. I'm creating a light show. So I set those up, write down your settings, put them in your phone, whatever you got to do. Come back later that night. I can turn everything on. I can control it right from the camera. And this is what the available light looks like, right? We've all seen this. If you've ever shot at a club, this is like 12,800 ISO at 2.8 at a 30th of a second, right? That's all you're going to get. But then I turned on my little flashes, right? And I got my 3 flashes. And all of a sudden, it looks like that, right? And that's like 800 ISO at 5.6 at 200th of a second. And here's the thing. How many people in the room can make that picture? Nobody. I'm the only one in the room that can make these pictures, right? And then once I'm set, everything's set it and forget it. Everything's locked in place. So I can move around. I can go to the back and zoom in. I can get up close. I can zoom out. It doesn't matter. The light is always going to be exactly the same. Now, the thing is, if you're going to do this, you got to read the room, okay? Don't be a jerk about this thing. If it's a James Taylor acoustic hour, you just you don't want to flash if it's really quiet and that kind of a show. If it's a rock show, a metal show, during sound check, I asked Haley after sound check, I said, hey, did those flashes bother you? She said, what flashes? I said, never mind. Right? They do not notice, right? It's again one of those things. It's easier to apologize later. Now, you don't. When she played a ballad, I didn't blast away. I don't want to give anybody a seizure or anything. But when she's playing a loud rock tune, I was taking pictures. And again, I was still tempering myself. I was shooting single frames, maybe 10 to 20 frames per song, just picking my moments, not shooting bursts or anything like that. But this venue had lights flashing and things like that. They're not as bright as mine, but the crowd doesn't know. They have no idea. And I can make pictures. I've done this 100 times, easy. And once you do it once with a band, they go, how'd you do that? I'm just good, You have to give away all your secrets. But nobody else does this because she's been photographed by a lot of people. But mine sticks out. Right? So that's another way to separate yourself. Use technology. As Ron mentioned before, I did cover the inauguration in 2009 of President Obama's inauguration. That was I don't think you mentioned that's what it was. That was the first gigapan that I did. But I went as a, quote, normal photographer. And I was photographing my regular pictures. I was locked into a position. I was lucky enough to get a credential. But I also knew when I found out I was going to get a credential to this, I started thinking about, okay, how can I make something different, right? There's going to be 500 of the world's best photographers at Obama's inauguration. I mean, it was a huge event. And I was like, how can I do something different? I don't want to shoot the same pictures everybody else. Otherwise, why am I there? What's the point? So I started researching, okay, first of all, I thought, what's the story here? Well, obviously, it was the first African-American president. That was a huge story. But I wasn't going to make the picture. The classic inauguration picture is the president with his hand on the Bible and the hand in the air taking the oath of office. That's the traditional inauguration photo. That's the dictionary definition. But I was pre-assigned to the other side of that stage. So I was going to have Obama's back. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to make that picture. And everybody else is going to make that picture, right? So then I said, okay, what's the other story here? Well, if you remember, There were rumors there were going to be possibly 2 million people at that event, right? 2 million people. I've been to a lot of big events. I've never seen 2 million people in one place before. So I thought that's a big story. How can I document and show the scope of the crowd? So I started researching things and I started making calls and looking online. I saw these 180-degree lenses and all these crazy cylindrical things. And I came across this brand new company called Gigapen Systems. And they had taken the technology that was developed, for the Mars rover program, right? All those, the actual scientists who developed for JPL, the technology where they take all those images and they stitch them together, right? Those guys licensed that technology to Gigapen Systems, and they made a commercial unit called the Gigapen. And the first one they had was literally just a little unit that only took a point and shoot. That's all it took. It had a little finger on it that took the picture. That's literally how it took the picture. It had a physical plastic finger that pushed down the button. That's how it worked. And what it did was it automated the movement of the camera. You put your point and shoot in there. I had a Canon G10. They actually lent me at the time because I didn't even own a point and shoot. And it automates the movement so that the overlap is consistent, and it makes it easier to stitch. And they made stitching software too. So instead of making 4 or 5 frames that you stitch really quickly, you could make hundreds of pictures and stitch them together. So I took this thing to the inauguration kind of on a whim. I was like, I don't know. I asked the company, I said, has it ever been used where there are people? And they were like, nope. Like, okay, well, I'll try it. And so I shot my quote real photos. I thought I was being a real journalist taking these pictures. And then I set up the Gigapen off to the side where I could get it. I clamped it to a railing. I set it up and I let it go. At the end of the day, after I was done transmitting my real photos, I was like, oh yeah, I wonder if that thing even worked, right? Because it kind of moves and it would finish and I would go and hit restart and do it again. I did 4 or 5 passes before the battery died. And I put it in the stitching software and it looked like this. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Now, each one of those is a full res, zoomed in, optical zoom, right? Not a digital zoom, optical zoom, all the way in, zoomed in image. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And it's, 220 images, right? 20 by 11. That's cool. And I started the stitch, and at that point, it took overnight to do the stitch. Now it takes about 5 minutes. But it did it overnight, and it came out, and it looked like that. Of course, I added the logo. I was like, oh, that's like one normal looking picture. I was bummed, photographically, I was bummed about the sky. I know I blew the sky up, but yeah, I was backlit, so there's nothing I could really do. But here's the thing, this picture is 1,400 and something megapixels. So it's like Google Maps where you can zoom in. This same picture, if you zoom in on the president, it looks like that. That's, right here. Right? And you can zoom all the way in. And then you can pan around the image, like Ron said, and you can see all kinds of things. That's all the living presidents at the time. That's Denzel Washington and P. Diddy. Everybody who was anybody was there. That's Yo-Yo Ma, who I just saw last week at Carnegie Hall. And using an iPhone 1, by the way, taking a picture, which I thought was really funny. And this was cool, right? I took this and I posted it on my blog. That's how long ago this was. And I just did one post. Facebook was kind of new. I did one post and I said, hey, check this out. Let me know what you think. And it went, within a couple of days, had 1 million views. Interviewed me on CNN. It was like everywhere. This thing went everywhere. Every blog, every website, every magazine wrote about it. It was kind of insane. So it's like, okay, now from a business standpoint, I didn't get paid extra for this, right? This was just a thing on my blog. But I was like, I was kind of bummed a little bit. First, I was like, oh, I feel like I missed an opportunity. But then I was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm now known as the guy who did this thing. I can take this to other events. So I was already covering Olympics and Super Bowls and those things. So I started using this for my clients at events. I did, this was the Olympics in London. It's the beach volleyball venue. And it's a gorgeous venue, but it's a great, it's a nice picture on its own, but you can zoom all the way in. And actually, so right up here, across the way, there's actually a guy who zoom in, and you zoom in even more. There's a guy painting pictures of me while I'm taking pictures of him. But you can see, obviously, if you were at the event, you can zoom in. Facebook back then, I don't know if you remember, you could zoom in, you could tag yourself in other photos, and then if you clicked it, it would take you to the picture, it would zoom in, it would show you, so that was kind of a cool thing. Major League Baseball hired me to do a bunch of those. But at this volleyball one, you could zoom in, you could see the toenail color. That's how tight it was. So it was kind of insane. So this technology, again, I used it for then the next 6, 7, 8 years. Major League Baseball had me do all the playoffs in the World Series, Super Bowls, Sports Illustrated, all that kind of stuff. So separate yourself, right? Using technology, finding a way, nobody had ever used this technology in this way, thinking how you can do something different. All right, that's number 2. Technology. Number 3 is never hurts to ask and don't take no for an answer. This is that whole being persistent without being obnoxious, finding that fine line there. I don't know that I would do this with Bon Jovi, but with a young up and coming band, if I'm like, hey, it'd be fun if you guys want to let me gaffer tape you to a tree, they're like, sure, why not, right? I mean, just coming up with crazy ideas and not being afraid to ask, right? Since I'm kind of an action photographer, even when I do portraits, I like to have some action, right? So I'm gonna ask people to jump. I come in, this is all time low, if you know those guys, and I'm older than they are, and they're like these young punks, and I'm like, hey, we're gonna jump, and they're like, yeah, whatever, and I probably jumped once like an idiot just to make them laugh, and I put up a couple of speed lights with gels on them, right? This is a boring gray hallway, but I just put up a couple of speed lights, and I had them jump once, and then I show them on the back of the camera, and they go, oh, okay, Now they have some idea what I'm doing, and it's a whole different vibe, right? So that was a great shoot from them, and I wound up working for them a bunch of times after that. So they were great. Once they got it, once you win them over, it's great. Don't be afraid to ask. Don King, if you ever have seen Don King, so boxing promoter, famous guy, he's got his one face, right? This is Don King. He holds his flags only in America, right? I don't know if you probably put it as Don King. He's got his one look, right? Oh, this was so frustrating. This is a portrait for Sports Illustrated. I'm doing a day in the life with him. I have to do a portrait that I'm following around. Actually, the next day he was being roasted in New York, and the roast master was Donald Trump, which I thought was funny. The two of them together, I had their hair was kind of making sparks. But anyway, but Don King, every time I picked up the camera, only in America, he's got his big smile. That's his media face, right? So I was on a quest, man. How do I make something different of this guy, right? I would literally put the camera down and talk to him, and he would be normal. Hey, Don, what are you doing tomorrow? What do you like to eat in the city? Blah, blah, blah. Pick up the camera, all in America. That was his thing. So I was like, all right, well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play with some technology. So I picked up Lens Baby, right? A little plastic lens. I thought, well, I'll do it in camera. I'll try to make some funky things in camera. It's like got a weird focus thing going on. It just looks a little off. So I started with that. And then I thought, you know what? I mean, Don King, it's all about the hair. So, Don, can you just give me a profile? Just turn a little bit to the side. All right, we're getting somewhere. Something a little bit different. I don't have to deal with the face and the whole thing. I said, you know what, Don, just keep going. Just keep turning. I'm sure he was laughing. I was like, all right, there you go. There's my picture, right? That's the picture they ran in Sports Illustrated. That's Don King, right? And so that's what I'm always trying to do. That kind of sums up. Another photographer friend once said, the best kind of portrait is when you know who it is without seeing their face, right? That's the best, right? So if you're old enough to know who Don King is, that's Don King. So that's always what I'm trying to do. I did some work with Drew Carey, the comedian Drew Carey, and he hired me literally he was doing this Improv All-Stars tour with a bunch of the comedians from Drew Carey show and Whose Line Is It Anyway? And he literally hired me out of his own pocket to basically get pictures of all the cast for them, for their social media and their stuff. He didn't need it of himself, but it was just a nice thing. We had become friends. I actually taught him how to shoot a little bit. He became pretty good, actually. But so he brought me on the road on this tour, right? Well, of course I'm going to do those stage photos, but you know me, I can't just do that. So I would always follow him backstage, and I get these nice moments of Drew, famous funny man Drew Carey in a pensive moment backstage, barefoot. Like this was actually at the end of the show. They did this improv bit where they walk across the stage barefoot with live mouse traps all over the floor and blindfolded, by the way. So, but it's kind of a nice moment. And then I always want to try to do something different. So I thought, we were in Vegas. I thought, let's do a portrait. And so I asked Drew, I said, you want to do a portrait tomorrow at like the craps table or something? He goes, yeah, if it's okay with the casino, it's okay with me. So then I went to the casino. Mr. Carey would like to do a portrait. If it's okay with Mr. Carey, then it's okay with us. It's like when you play your mom and dad against each other. But so the next day, the casino cordoned off a table for us. They had security, the whole thing. And I got the whole cast there. And we did a portrait at a craps table, at a real craps table in Las Vegas. And it's very simple lighting. There's nothing too fancy going on. But it's an amazing cast. And I didn't have to even direct them too much. I mean, they're all amazing actors and comedians. So it was super fun. Drew was actually teaching them how to play. And of course, he was winning and they were all losing. So it was super fun. But I just did this because I came up with it, right? Don't be afraid to ask and don't take no. Make it happen. Do whatever you have to do to make it happen. And then the next year, this tour went out again. I wasn't going out with them. It went out again. and they licensed this photo back from me to use for the promo posters for the next year. So this is not just fun photography, this is also making money. So don't be afraid to ask, don't take no offense. And then number 4 is always give them more than they expect, right? It took me a while to learn this one. I know my early years of the Herald, I was as lazy as the next guy. I was a young kid. I didn't really understand, how to sort of go above and beyond. But those years of the Herald really taught me that, because once you sort of figure that out, it's so much easier, right? Once you have that thought process of just always going above and beyond, under promise and over deliver, as an entrepreneur, as a freelancer, that serves you so well. So I've always tried to do that. With Luke Combs, so I toured with him for a couple of years, and then he was doing his first stadium, his first real stadium gig. And how do I document that? Of course, I'm going to get pictures of the show. I'm going to be on stage. You're going to see that there's a stadium, but I got to do something different. So that's really cool when it does that. So how do I do something different? So I thought the week before, instead of flying home and then flying back to the next stadium gig, I went out and I went to the stadium the next day. I spent the whole week there, and I did a time lapse. Just did a photo time lapse. Not super hard to do, a little complicated to get the logistics, but once I got it figured out, I did a time lapse. Our crew is amazing. On an arena show, it takes them about 6 hours to load in everything, right? All the lighting and the sound and the stage and all that. A stadium takes 6 days, because the first day and a half is just covering the field, right? It would come in an empty stadium. There's nothing there. Then the steel teams come in and they have to build all the steel structures that hold all the lighting and the staging. Then they put the lighting up and the sound and then the stage and then the instruments and then there's the show. It takes 6 days to do that. So I set up this was in Seattle. I set up 2 cameras. I had one, an old, what was it? It was probably a 5D SR, because I wanted lots of megapixels and I didn't have enough new cameras to dedicate to this time lapse. And then a 1DX probably Mark III. And I had those 2 cameras, one with a long lens, one with a wide lens. First of all, I'm covering my butt in case one of them goes down. Second of all, I have 2 different focal lengths, so I can cut back and forth in the video. So, and I let them run for 6 days. I went in twice a day into the stadium. I pulled the cards. I did raw conversions every day. I changed the battery on the 1DX. The 5D was plugged in, and made a time lapse. So I don't know if there's actually sound coming through here, but I'll crank it a little bit. But this is what I turned a 6-day load in into a 40-second time lapse. This is what it looks like. And they loved it, right? I mean, what's not to like about that? So if you're other thing. But that's what's that? Yeah. Maggie, the great Maggie Stever, the legend. You lost it already.
Okay. Yeah. No, but I think you said this, but were you there? Pushing the button on it?
Yeah, no, so I did not stand there for 6 days pushing the button. I did want to hire somebody to watch it for 6 days, but I found a somewhat secure place. No, the intervalometer in the camera will do it automatically. Now, again, I don't trust it completely.
What is that?
There's in the camera. You can use either an external thing that'll trigger it automatically, or some of the cameras actually have it built in, a setting that will do, take a picture every minute or however. Will you set it for all the settings? Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I don't think the Leicas will do that, but do they have alarms?
They keep doing the sound of the S sound.
Okay, there you go.
What about the power? Hardwired?
Well, yeah. So the 5DSR, I was hardwired. I had the AC adapter into the wall, and then the 1DX easily lasted 12 hours. And I would just that big 1DX battery, 1DX Mark 3 or 4, whatever that was. And I would change it every 12 hours. I would go in and change it. Yeah. So sometimes it was the middle of the night, like 2 a.m, and I was kind of hanging out with the crew guys, and maybe we had a couple of adult beverages, and then I would stagger into the stadium by myself. The stadium is empty. It's pitch black, an empty football stadium. That was cool. That was kind of one of those moments where I just sit there going, what am I doing right now? Like, this is insane. So yeah, twice a day. And then the next morning I was like, I hope I didn't screw up that camera when I was there last night. No, luckily it all
Thank
worked
you.
out. Thank you, Maggie. Yeah. Change the settings, no. So what I did with this was, because it was going to be day and night and all that, I used aperture priority, and then there's software you can use because it'll flicker a little bit if you do that. There's 2 flicker software that you can use, so it'll kind of even it out in post. Good question. I did a video, one of my essay videos about, they call it the Holy Grail time lapse, because to go from day to night or night to day is tricky unless you're manually changing it as you go. So I used aperture priority, which I never used for anything else, but you had to. Because I knew it was going to be day and night, so I'm not going to sit there for 6 days. So I wasn't quite that dedicated. But so giving them more than they expect. No, my boss did not hire me to do that. They didn't ask me to do that. They didn't pay me extra to do that. That was just something I came up with on my own. Instead of spending the week at home, I spent the week in Seattle doing that. So, and then things like remote cameras. I mentioned remote cameras before. Remote cameras are very common in sports. This was in the Herald days on film, and girl Dan Marley, is that Ronnie Cycling? No, I can't tell. On the Magic. But a remote camera, all remote camera is another camera you set up somewhere else and trigger it remotely. And this allows you to take pictures from unique positions, places you can't stand. Someplace you couldn't, I obviously couldn't sit on top of the backboard. That would be awkward during a game. I was just sitting up there. So you can put a camera there. Also, you can clone yourself. You can have multiple cameras all over the place. Obviously with permission, especially at an NBA game or something like that. But I think I was one of the first people really to bring that technology from the sports world into the music world. So as I was doing more concerts, I thought, wait a minute, I can use this technology. So I started putting cameras in weird places on the stage. Now I can go on the stage, but I'm not there all night. So having a camera, a place like that up on the stage, whenever the artist turns around and faces that thing, I can trigger that thing remotely from the crowd and make pictures. It's a crapshoot, right? A remote can't be you have to have photo, right? It's an extra going above and beyond picture. If you nail it, it's great, right? But you never know, because I'm not looking through it at that time. I'm not downloading it. I'm not on deadline that way. I'm just triggering and taking a lot of pictures. And hopefully you get something that works out. But I've done it all kinds of different ways. I put them on, this is a platypod floor plate with a ball head, pocket wizard on the top. And you get people act differently when there's not a person there. If I was standing there, it might not be the same reaction from a person as if there's a camera there. If I get up early enough on the tour bus, if I roll out of bed early enough, sometimes I'll put a camera on our lighting trusses when our crew is setting up. And then they raise it up into the rafters, and I go bye-bye. And you never really know with that shot how it's going to look. But if you get it up there in a really weird place, right? I can't access that during the show, but sometimes it just works out, right?
Wow.
So you never know, right? And this was at his alma mater. This was at App State. So this was a huge show. So I had to have this photo. Just trying to think outside the box. So once you start playing around with different angles and different things like this, you find different ways. I force myself. People ask me sometimes, how do you shoot the same show over and over every night? And I say, I'm always trying to make one different picture every night. Of course I have to make a body of work that's, a lot of the same stuff over and over. But if I make one unique picture every night, I'm happy. So I try anything. I'll go out there on stage with a 20-foot tripod, right? And put a camera up there. No, I don't stay out there for long. I run out, raise that thing, and then get the hell out of there, right? But, that's how you make pictures like that. So always trying to do something different. I, for years, covered the NFL draft for Sports Illustrated. It is the most boring event to photograph on the planet, right? Because literally the player comes out, shakes hands with the commissioner, and goes off stage, and that's it, right? So, excuse me, cough. Pardon me. So this is a picture everybody gets. All the photographers, they put them in the same area. Everybody gets the same photo, right? All the national media, everybody. It's Matt Stafford, first pick in 2009. I think that was from my notes. Future Super Bowl champion. Shaking hands with Goodell. So this is the picture everybody gets, but you know me by now. The days leading up to that, I was poking the NFL staff. I was like, guys, you gotta let me do something different. I'm a Sports Illustrated. I gotta put the cameras on the stage. They're like, no way, we're not gonna let you. Come on, it's gonna be great, man. It's at Radio City Music Hall, blah, blah, blah. Push. And eventually they let me do it. So I put a bunch of cameras all over this thing so I could get the same moment from different angles. This is up closer to the stage with a wide angle lens. There are no photographers there, but right at the footlights, I've got that. Also, right there at the bottom, I've got another camera hidden right at the bottom there. They actually, the guys at Radio City, the Teamsters, who were very nice, built this little platform so that from the overhead TV shot, it was camouflaged. You couldn't see my camera because they didn't want to see the big black box in there. So I was able to get this. Now, it did get bumped a little bit. A video guy walked by, it got bumped, so there's a little bit of a vignette on the side there. But that's the money shot, right? That's Radio City Music Hall. If you notice, these are all the same moment in time, right? I'm taking this picture once. All the cameras are firing. I'm hand holding for that first shot, all the others. I needed one more though, also. I put another camera up there. I went up there early in the day. Somebody took me up there. It's an old spotlight area. It's all covered in cobwebs. They don't use it anymore. They only could bring me up once to put it up and up once to get it at the end. That was it. So I couldn't test it or anything. So I wasn't sure about the radios working that far. So what I did was I put it up there. I set the intervalometer on the camera. And I had it start 10 minutes before the draft started and just take a picture every 5 seconds. I don't care if it shoots 10,000 frames. All I need is one. And so I have a picture from there also. Right? And that's all roughly the same moment. Sports Illustrated wound up running that one. And I got the big double truck on the side. But I gave them options, right? I gave them, by myself, I gave them 4 or 5 different angles instead of just saying, well, here's my picture, right? So going above and beyond, giving them more than they expect. I covered this. I'm fortunate to have covered a bunch of Super Bowls. I got to this amazing staff of people. The Herald staff was amazing. Sports Illustrated staff was amazing. But when I did this was in Miami. This when the Saints won in Miami. You're locked into a position, right? So I'm in this spot. Nothing came my way. Everything was going the other direction. You can't do anything about it. I'm locked into the spot. You guys that have covered Super Bowls know you're just stuck. I had one touchdown on my end, but it really wasn't great. At the end of the game, Peyton Manning's driving towards me. I'm like, this is it. He's going to throw the game-winning touchdown right in my corner. Bring it on, baby. He throws it right in my direction, intercepted, runs 74 yards the other direction. Peyton tries to tackle him, gets nothing, and he goes all the way, and I got nothing, right? And that was it. And I could see the other photographers at the other end, like, celebrating, like, oh, we got a great picture. I got nothing. So that was it. Game's over, and most photographers at that point in my position, who were where I was, they all left, right? Game's over. The ceremony at the end where they give out the trophy was that I was kind of in the back corner. It was like on the 50, all the way at that end facing the TV camera. So we were behind it. So they all left. I said, you know what? I'm going to stay and just give it a shot. We've got other photographers over there. Let them have that. I'm going to stay. I'm going to come over here. So the ceremony happens. This is 600 millimeters. This is all the way. Coach goes up there. He gets it. Drew Brees comes up. His wife comes up. They bring his kid up. It's kind of nice, blah, blah, blah. All right. But I'm a million miles away. I take all those pictures, and that's it. I got nothing. I go home depressed. I was staying at my mom's because it was in Miami. And that was it. Next day, it's on Sunday, obviously. Monday, I get an email from the director of photography of Sports Illustrated. And all it says is, welcome to the club. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, oh, you got the Super Bowl cover. And I had SI covers, but never there's only a handful of, 40 or 50 Super Bowl covers. And I go, that's not possible. You screwed up because we're shipping digital cards. I'm like, you must have mislabeled a card. There's no way I have the cover from this game. And then he sent it to me, and it was that, right? And I mean, it's a hell of a crop, but it held up really, really nicely. And I still like, this is one of those covers that when people say, oh, what have you shot? I said, you know, the Drew Brees. That's like, oh yeah, okay. So it's just going above and beyond, giving them more than they expect, staying in that spot when everybody else has given it up, right? You just never know. So those are kind of the 4 things. Real quick, I'm just going to kind of put it all together. I was fortunate to do a bunch of, I did 3 coffee table books with Bon Jovi. One of them was this nice big one called Work I'm very proud of. Thank you. Not available anymore, sold out, sorry. But I realized I use all of these things in the course of the book. If you see a group of photographers together, go somewhere else. I was with John at a movie premiere. Nothing against all those photographers. They make a good living. I like those guys, but I don't ever want to be one of them, right? I don't want to be locked behind a barricade with everybody else. They're all making the same photo. I want to be the guy up here taking pictures of them, right? I want to see them. I'm always trying to go different angles at the shows. I made this nice big wide shot, but then I zoomed in and did a tight shot. I was like, oh, that's kind of nice too. This picture is funny because I always try to be somewhat stealthy. I'm a big guy, but I try to like not be, you will want to be a fly on the wall. And especially with Bon Jovi, I really don't want to distract him in any way. So with this situation, I had to wear a harness. It was a whole thing to go up on the roof of the stadium. They brought me up there, and I was like, "Oh, I'll just be really stealthy. You know, nobody will ever see me up here." One of our guys actually shot a very bad phone picture of me up there real quick. You'll never see me, but if you look really carefully, you might notice where I am. There's just no way to hide. But I'm always trying to go and get different angles, the high angles, the remote cameras. You saw this picture already. This is what I've always done. This is even a remote camera, right? So going somewhere else, using technology, right? This is all the technology, putting yourself in different places. This is the only spot in Soldier Field where you can see the stage and the city, right? And it's not publicly accessible. So I went there early, I worked it out, and got permission to go up there. Don't ask for what is it? Don't take no for an answer, right? Don't be afraid to ask. Don't take no for an answer. I'm on a yacht with John Bon Jovi in Sydney, Australia, and I said, "Hey, it'd be cool if you kind of did your famous jump, And he was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." I was like, "No, I was kidding." Like he's barefoot. I'm like, that's the last thing I need is him to slide and slip off of there. But that worked out. Going with him to the gym. He was working out. I was just taking pictures. But I was there in the gym with John Bon Jovi when he's getting warmed up, photographing all this stuff, documenting all this stuff, bringing fans to the places they normally wouldn't get to go, where they get to see things they wouldn't only get to see, right? So those are the 4 things that I've really found that I've used. I know you're getting ready to kick me off, but I have one more quick story. Those are the 4 things you really need to do, that I've done at least, to separate myself throughout my career consistently, and it works. It's just worked. One more quick story I'm going to tell. I had first moved to New York in 2001. I moved February 2001. I left the Herald Magazine, was our director of photography, and moved to New York to go freelance. It was a photographer in New Jersey, Najla Fiani, and the story she tells is that she had gone to an adoption agency. Her and her partner wanted to adopt a child. And they went to the adoption agency in New Jersey, and they gave them this big album of pictures of the kids who were available to adopt. And they were horrible Polaroid photos, whatever they were. Nothing was Polaroid. They were crappy photos. And so it makes you not want to adopt any of these kids. So she said, "This is ridiculous. I'm a photographer. I know a bunch of photographers. Let's do something about this." So she created this amazing thing called the New Jersey Heart Gallery. And they went on to do it in a bunch of other states as well. But this was she did this one in New Jersey. And she contacted 100, I think it was 100 photographers, friends and friends of friends, and to do portraits of all of the kids who were currently in the adoption system in New Jersey. I didn't know her at the time. She got to me through a mutual friend. And I remember when she called me, she was like, "Yeah, about this great project." And I was kind of sheepish about it. I was like, "Najla, I'm not really like a sad kid photographer." You know what I mean? And she was like, "No. That's not what you do, your style. Like, you're an action sports guy." I was like, "Oh, that'd be fun." Like, sure. So she assigned me to photograph these 3 kids at a foster home in New Jersey. And I brought Sports Illustrated hats, and I brought a football. And I thought, "Oh, we'll throw the ball around. I'll get them like diving for football. It'll be super fun, right?" So I get there, and it was pouring rain. It was just a horrible day. And I was like, "Oh, well, there goes the outdoor football pictures." So I always had lights with me. Now it's speed lights. Back then it was old not Speedotrons, probably Dynalights. And but I always had my kit of lights with me, strobes, and a couple of stands. And so the kids, they were so cute. They were dressed up in their Sunday best. They didn't know. They were probably just told, like, "You're being photographed." So they didn't know what I was doing. So what I did was we were in their room, and there was a bed and a couple of beds in the room. And I asked them, as soon as the last adult left the room, I asked them, I said, "Hey, so do they ever let you jump on the beds here?" And they're like, "No, they don't." I'm like, "It's happening right now. Get your shoes off. We're doing this," right? So the shoes came off. They started jumping on the beds, and I made portraits, right?
Oh.
And so this is kind of my style, right? It's action photography. We had a blast. It was super fun, and we had a great time, right? I gave out the hats. We still threw the football around inside a little bit and called it a day. It took me a few hours, right? And I left there, and again, it took me about a half a day. I left there feeling good and whatever. And then I kind of forgot about it, moved on with my life, had jobs, had things to do. And Najla, to her credit, did an amazing job getting publicity for this. So we had a big gala event at the New Jersey Liberty Science Center. They raised a lot of money for the adoption system. They made these giant prints that were all donated. And people were, buying, I don't know if they were buying things, but there was, they donated a lot of money. And a lot of publicity. USA Today ran a big package But these pictures ran, a lot of the pictures ran. They interviewed me on Nightline. Like, it was crazy. Right? It was really a big deal. So selfishly, I had just moved to New York. It was kind of good PR. It was a good thing to be involved with. But that was it. Again, I moved on with my life. Maybe 3 years later, 3 years later, I get an email randomly from a woman, and she says, "Do you remember that kid Joshua you photographed from the art gallery? Can I get a print of that photo?" And I was like, "Sure, but why?" And she said, "Well, I've adopted him. He's coming home next week for the first time, and I want to have the print hanging over his bed." And, I wept. I mean, it was just like, I started thinking, okay, what took me a few hours out of my life as a photographer literally changes his life, changes her life. Who knows what that kid is going through? I got to follow up and find out where he is. Maybe he's curing cancer. I don't know, Who knows what, but literally, I don't do that kind of photography that like Stephanie does that really changes the world's minds about big, political things and big cultural things. But that kind of thing, we all have skills as photographers. And if you can do a little bit to give some of that back, I'm all for making this a living and making money at it. But every once in a while, I probably don't do it as often as I should. Every once in a while, if you can use your skills to give back, it's just so, it just warms your heart, right? So do that if you can. And so that's my final thing, is to give back when you can. Thank you very much. I think I'm shooting in there in about 15 minutes. I've got a band. They were just calling me a minute ago, so I don't know if they're out there or they're stuck outside. But I've got a real band coming in. I'm going to do a promo shoot with them, basically with speed lights, really simple. So I hope you'll come in there and join me for that. I can take questions and hang on to our time for questions. Oh, yeah. Any questions? Yeah, send it right there. What Josh is doing, yes, I will find out what Josh is doing. Who was my client for the Big Pen? Back then, I got the credentials to Corbis, which is a photo agency which no longer exists. But it was basically spec work. So it was like, they weren't paying me straight up. But it was the inauguration. So I was like, I'm going to be okay with this one. So yeah, that's how they got like 2 credentials. Corbis, yeah, for the agency.
No. Yes, okay. This is the FX6.
From who? From the client? They don't want to talk about it. Yeah. So everybody couldn't hear. He said basically, as a sports photographer and videographer, other photographers, I guess, are reluctant to give out information. I've seen that. People are dodgy about even who they work for and stuff. He says he's trying to ask people, how did you do this? Look, there's a million people in the world, and some of us are more open. I was probably more closed when I was 25, because it's like, because you're nervous about your own work. There's only a limited amount of work. It's like you don't want somebody to steal the work from you. At 53, I don't care, man. Go for it. You want to look for loopholes? Try it. Right? So I'll tell you anything you want to know. Now I will say, I hate to be the old guy, but there's so much more information out there now than there ever was before. We had no information back before the internet, right? You had to go to meetings, to meet other photographers. But events like this are great, and keep in touch with me, and I'll tell you whatever you want to know. And there are good people out there. You got to search for them. But like you just said, man, you got to keep at it and keep focused on what you want, unintended, and you'll get there. You just got to keep at it. Thank you.
I was curious to know if at any point, maybe Sports Illustrated or some other publication, when you didn't get the picture that some of the other photographers got, did they get upset
if they were mad? No. So she asked if Sports Illustrated would ever get upset that I didn't have the picture that everybody else had. Luckily, Sports Illustrated was pretty good about that. They probably give you some lighthearted ribbing about it, like, oh, you missed that picture. And I say, but I was up high doing this other thing. And they go, oh, okay. Or Jimmy and Steve Fine. Jimmy's the best. I don't know what the band is calling. I don't know if they're out there trying to get in, but I think they have a band name. Brian Danny. But yeah, it depends on the client. At the Herald, obviously, there's a daily newspaper, right? It depends on your client. It does definitely depend on your client. At the newspaper, I had to have the game-winning picture, right? Because that's the next day. That's what everybody's going to see. you're working for a wire service, or you're working for the team, or whatever. And if you're working for the team, maybe your needs are different. Maybe you don't need the game-winning shot. Maybe you need that nice wide shot that shows the stadium and has the advertising and whatever. You've got to know your client. You can also do your own pictures on the side as long as it doesn't conflict with them. That's, luckily with what I'm doing now is as I work for artists on tour, they don't need the same picture every day. So I'm trying to make different pictures and they appreciate that. So it just depends on the client. So. Cool. All right. So I think there's like a 10-15 minute break. I'm getting the band in. We're going to get set up in there. Hopefully you'll come on in. We'll make a picture with a bunch of speakers. Thanks, everybody.
No, hold on.
Oh, we got something. Here's my guys. Everybody. I'm David. Yep. All right. Okay. All right, we got a tongue tie just arrived. We're going to be starting wrapping up. Yeah, so we're going to have a raffle at the end of the day. I'm going to pass out. We're going to have your wristband. Okay, and then I'll pass out the wristband. I'll pass it out. Also, Canon has half off on their strobe, which is really great. And if you it's a T5. TL5. If anyone's interested, it's on sale now for 400, 200, more or less. And then if you had any Canon equipment clean, they're asking for you to go pick it up as soon as you can. And if you have the ribbons, I'll go ahead and pass it on. Thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Yeah. By the way, the raffle is for t-shirts, hats, printers. We've got a jacket and flip-flops and Fuji camera. Good luck.
So if you didn't get a ticket, come see me. Also, Candace Barbeau will be speaking at 3:30. Bergman at 2:30 in the studio. Oh. I'm sorry, Bergman will be speaking now at 2 o'clock in the studio to join us. Yeah.
Right, so you know the two is the most power, right? You know that 0.1 is the lowest power. Right there, it's too bright. And there's also there's an auto load, which is I'm not, so I would. Sure. What I'll do is I'm gonna be able to see you guys. So, it's more money because it has but it also has this remote ability. So you can actually do this and it fires all the other lights. You can control all the other lights. So this is ready to control the lights as well.
Yeah, but also, I feel like I think this is too much. Oh, he actually start right away.
That's also oh, yeah. Sure. Really, it's designed to be well, I was actually trying to show oh, yeah. Exactly. You first buy this, and then you get the app, and then you use the app to take photos. So it's called Photo. What it does is it But anyways, use the app. It's just like taking photos with your phone. Except you can flash it there and six. And then you just turn the power on. That's as simply as I can put it. Try it out. But yes, it's a free app.
Wow.
It's super cool.
And this is the suitcase here.
I got it.
when we get in there. Oh, so this is the story of that. Oh, these are and this this is one of my best friends. I love it.
Maggie, is that your work?
It's some new work. So I grew up by myself, and so I love the grade B horror movies, like here, or science fiction movies where you can see the
Animatronic.
well, the space.
Oh, yes, yes, yes,
You
yes.
see
The string?
the strings. So this was one of my best friends when they was like a brother to me, and so he came to visit me, and so I made him be afraid, and these are my shadows, and it's just silly, but you know, if you would sort of a lot of misery and suffering. So I did this story for National Geographic on memory. It was the science of memory. And so we wanted to show what happens in the brain with Alzheimer's. And this is a healthy brain, and this is Alzheimer's. So, big brain thanks.
Forensically correct, you can have a look.
Yes.
That's the reason why I said it's correct.
So great that you, I think that would be interesting. That and make it interesting movie too. But what so all over the country there were brain banks where people donate their brains. We tried to get them to cut you a slice, and it was so difficult. It took us a month, and finally UCLA at the University of California said, okay, we'll cut this slice. So I went and I came in with plexiglass. This is my picture. And gels. So it looks like this. But at the end of it, I spent 8 hours working these two things. And so at the end, the doctor came in and said, okay, yeah, right. So we put on these gloves, and I just thought, this looks so weird.
But you know what it looks like? It's funny. It's talking about brain, right? It looks like
Something of the lens.
No. Like when you go to a psychologist and they tell you the Rorschach test. Tell me that doesn't look like a Rorschach symbol.
Yeah, you're right.
Could be a butterfly.
I always walnut is more like it, but no, but the science of the lens. Have you ever seen and then this is a sacrificial lens. It's pretty sad. I did a story on the science of seeing. He was doing this research to measure so they were measuring humans have the same sleep cycles and they're very similar. So I don't know why we have so much of these guys who are that stuff, but so they wanted to see if the Asian man had the same. So this was a mama was pregnant. And the baby was almost finished cooking. And then,
Electrodes.
Electrodes, thank you. And this is
Yeah, right, so there should be a.
Sneak in the period, so it literally is the Sabbath. It's like when I was
Oh, this is.
I mean, anything that's is significant.
This is one of our stores. So that usually
So this is like
Well, see,
and here, this is like trust me enough for the night.
you wanted it.
And I mean, this is this series, and this was actually in a museum. So anyway, and then I stayed in Sydney. One day, and I stayed in this hotel that was like so different. Bronze, gold,
¿Todo bien?
really. And I thought, this looks
traffic, you know.
Yeah.
John Cusack or book. And it's called Room. John Cusack.
Fulani. No, Fulani se llama, no sé, ¿verdad?
Oh, this is really and look, this is 41.4.
John Cusack.
Thank you. This is so this is not at all my etiquette.
Pero está bien, está funcionando. Sí.
And I just
Where did you get it?
actually, no, I had an exhibition of this work, but anyway, it was maybe 10 more prints. But the gallery, it was in Dania Beach. Yeah, they had it printed and I paid $30 each and they gave me the money. So but they
Para dárselo a él y eso ya está conectado.
David tiene un micrófono, pues.
Ah, pero no es el de allá adentro, ¿no?
No, no, hay que cambiar, porque
Tengo que
tiene que traerme
cambiar.
el micrófono aquel.
Ya te traigo ese.
Ajá, y ponerle.
Porque él ya va a comenzar. No sé si quieres ir para allá. Pues yo prendí la cámara, pero no sé.
Y todo el mundo entonces es una vaina horrible.
¿Qué hago
Ponle
con
este, pégalo de la cámara, lo vas a grabar, ¿no?
Sí.
Y es para que él se escuche todo el mundo, lo escuche todo el mundo, o es nada más para
Para
el
grabar.
video. Porque entonces conecta esto al cablecito rojo que está guindando, y entonces lo pones a él y te
¿Ya
trae.
está conectado?
Ya está conectado. Cuidado, te confunde con los bichitos. No, ojalá no lo sobres para el programa.
Es que yo estaba pensando, pero
La vida ahorita,
en este pedo.
Ay, sí, mierda. No, bueno, se rompa cuando ya la comí. Luego, y este era el momento entre el momento. No es el momento para meterme en un juego. Trabajando bien. Claro, no, y te vas a ver que te vas a dar cuenta de ¿cuántos meses? Solamente los 7 días. Entonces yo necesito sí, pues.
And you can do what is and so she wakes up, but when she wakes up, she's like, and so she wakes up, then she starts one flower, wakes up, then she goes into brushes and gets to I don't know. Yeah. And you take her through.
Right, you can do
And again.
Well, right now, we're selling. Yeah, but we're selling these by the same shop starting.
That could be fun.
So then you can.
And that becomes a series that is also.
Yeah, I haven't been out of.
Well, there you go. Well, see? Well, maybe more than
Well, you can tell them.
Claudia, ¿quiere que me lleve una silla para allá?
Vuela una pila de PCI. La pila tiene la NH.
Yeah, just you guys have already like.
Me mudé ahorita, güey. Mira, 2925, Northwest, 130 TH, Avenida 3, 2, 23.
Oh, my leg is.
Contract.
And that's what I did. I should have done it yesterday. I just wanted to try to make it.
No, pero si me pones en el
Save me, man. Save me. I owe you. Yeah, I'm break back. I had a nice bag that I travel with, nice bag.
Maybe tear up, you know. No, but.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's all. Bueno, ahí yeah, I didn't have that. Yeah, right. Yeah. You're my 1 hour and 45 minutes. All right.
Sí, a ver. Ven. Bien. Sí. Vale, toma. Ok, necesito tu ID. Seguro y cuando aparezca. Seguro, hermano.
But it's very small.
Ya. ¿Ya te las hayas no lo vas a dar? Gracias. Gracias.
Yeah, it's just a small.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Four hours. And then I'm on my heading out to WC. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we don't see you there. I might see you again.
Ya, con la cámara.
Yes.
I saw that.
Oh, you saw that?
I saw that. Do you mind if we use that 6 instead of a 7?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's fine.
You want to talk about the Burano, the new Sony camera?
I don't know enough to talk about
Okay.
it. That would be nice.
I have it there. Did you take a picture? Yeah, you can take a picture. Take a picture.
Okay, trying to work something.
Where are you off to next?
Why does the service center? Well, I just started R50 yesterday, and I got a stock of lenses that I wanted to go look at before you guys came by. I called and said, I had the service would be open till 4.
Yeah, yeah. So this one right now.
And it would be 10 minutes to take a look to see what's there. Have lenses that don't permit more cameras. If you have a lens, at least that I can go ahead and because they said they had 4. And so I organized my day. I'm ready.
Or this, or actually, so you know.
Well, something came up with them, and that's why they had to something came up for the 2 of them, and their flight got changed. So that's why they're plugging out. They had no choice on that.
So, is he the only, are they the only technicians?
There's the techs, and they, all the other stuff is backed up on them, so we'd be able to do a cleaning on
I
that.
mean, you know, still, something came up, you changed the script, and then, you know, and those are the times.
Well, that happens, I mean, that happens sometimes.
No, they said they had.
I know, you gotta go.
So how do we fix this? What can we do?
Well, I can take a look at the stuff, I just can't get a cleaning on it, that's all. We can take a look and see what works and what fits.
I know what works and what doesn't work, I just want to see what we can find for solutions. This is so disappointing, to be honest with you, like, I tried across town to come here and. Very cool. Just brought a new body yesterday, so. I got it. Hey, ¿cómo está? I got it from the one that's going, this got a thing and it doesn't focus, I can't find it. Maybe it's a, it's also got. So, I mean, the glass is glass.
Yeah, it's got fungus in it. Yeah, that's a fungus growing.
But glass is glass, and this thing, you know, your body. This one will communicate with you. What's your name?
I'm Jeff. Hey, Bob. You've met before.
I've been saying, listen. So. Now it's worth saying.
No, I haven't. I'm just backing up some of the stuff that.
Yeah, this one's just in the service. So you said that it's when you fix it.
Yeah.
This one I could just scrap. There's, nobody's gonna, no, you can't trade it in. You can't, yeah.
You want to build glass or anything like that?
I don't think it's even self. For one thing, a couple things. It's out of service. It's very, very old. And it's got fungus and the mechanisms aren't working. So the focus systems aren't working. So something's broken in there. It's not even moving the elements. So this one, I would say.
Let's look at something here.
I wouldn't do that.
Te voy a ayudar, pero te voy a ayudar. Tienes café en la mano, te voy a ayudar y te por un recibo. No,
What body would you buy? Buy a new body?
Which one's the better of the offense?
It would be dark. Sure. It's an adapter. Yeah, that's all kinds
Thank you. We were hoping a couple other people.
De las nuevas, ¿cuál show?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'm gonna try to rack my brain on it. It's the key case. No kid. It's like, that's one of those chains. Yeah, right. Yeah. I understand that. Really cool now. Yeah. Seriously, let's see. Dude, you got it.
O sea, y lo de comprarlo.
I had this
Para que
Put the moving thing and things out. Exactly.
Yeah.
I have one. I think that's a little bit chocolate. Yeah, we changed it. Because I got a long drive. I gotta say what.
hay que repararle.
It didn't work with the new one. What's happening on this one? I would take this lens and have them do a service on it. The store, AVC. The store. They have, they can actually have service. So I would get with one of their. Hey, you want one? Whatever they can do it here, they send it somewhere.
All right, man. Yeah, so I was like, is there so I figured so much. Yeah, so that's out right now. Just like anything else, right? So you want me to, so here's the 2x30, here's the 3-foot. Do you want me to put it up somewhere? Okay, you don't mind? And then here are the bags. Okay, no worries. Oh, got it. Okay. These are the bags for men. Yeah. Exactly. And you are so good. Thank you.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I'll show you. That's mine.
Yeah.
Context, so.
We've spoken before.
Yeah, so let me try and get the last.
Okay. Yeah. All right, sounds good.
I have a question for you.
Yes. Yes. Yes, you bet. Yes. 24.99 minus 2 minus 3 19.99. That's just for the body, no lens.
I changed it up.
If you want the lens, there's 2 different.
Straight up hot water.
Oh. Better lens. So that would be at the cheaper lens. You added $300, or you add 1,000, or you 1,100 for the other. It depends on which one. The better one, yes. Yeah, 24.05. Either that one or
Not fully.
Partial. Yes.
that one or that one.
Yeah, of course.
This is ready.
Yes. Oh, 430. Maybe that might be, I'll look it up. Yes. No, not that one. There's one more that's a lot more expensive. This is F4, that's F2.8. So F4. That's going back away, so. That's the EX.
Yes.
Gotcha. That's our five. Yeah, the three was our team, right? Yeah, the two, sorry.
It's crazy.
What does it do?
It's a tripod. This is a small rig. It's a phone.
Oh, gotcha.
So it doesn't.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, oh, this isn't that intense.
Yeah, no,
But it makes sense because it's small.
Yeah, so you can add all your accessories.
All your accessorized. Also looks like a broadcaster.
Yeah, right, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's done.
I brought the scooter and things, I'm not walking around. Last night. That's not.
Yeah, no, you're going to
It has just been wrong on Monday, so.
We've never formally said this is our first step.
This is where this goes. Thank you. I know you're probably going to be like, oh yeah, that's exactly what.
All I remember was that whip and the whip. All I remember was that whip. And the horse whip. And you came in, you slapped it down. Yes.
Let me bring you back on the bike.
Yeah, I'm by myself. Oh, yeah, I had to hurry up and get down.
Oh my God, I looked over the show in front.
Right here, style.
Wherever it's just. Okay, so work, this so we didn't know that. That's what she said. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so.
¿Todo en orden?
Bueno, cuando me olvidaba, bueno, y mi mujer está en un bridal shower.
¿A ti te gusta? Claro, por eso. Te lo disfruto un ratito, claro.
El vacilón de la mañana.
El vacilón. Está bien.
With that other one, yes.
Yeah, there's some paper here. I'm sorry, it wasn't.
It's just five for us. So nice to look at that.
System where you have the free version, just go online and sign up for it. And if you have those here, plug in the gear that you have.
We do, so that's.
And as you accumulate one gear, the more gear you have, the more levels you will. And it's not going to be
Mira, ¿quién le toca hablar ahora?
Anything, any gear that you have, you plug it in with the serial number, and then it tells you what level your health is. Sounds good, yeah, it's nice they're all together.
Because it's 2 words, not 1 word. So that's what it's like an umbrella. It'll collapse. Well, you can use them with these as well. So pull this down. Exactly. So it's 2 different things. You can direct on the back, or you have zoom on, and then you can shoot video, or you can draw. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. 120 I'm still here for questions. Like 20, 25 minutes. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I'm good.
Yeah, 2,500 and 3,000. I mean, you know, like there's that too, but you can also put in, you know, this.
It's like doing something this small, you know, it's like, are you using so much that you're literally.
I don't think you're gonna be, unless you are, right, unless you're so what the explosive flash tube that 360 degree circular flow, it can do it all. So I would not be hesitant at all to put this in here. It's just this.
One page, talking at what time?
Well,
This is, you know.
well, there's
Disappointment in your studio, having it as a bunch of piece what you use it later. We used to have giants, we used to make little giant molds. They were like 7 foot. They're all so it's just.
It'll be right in the middle of that.
Yeah.
Can you guys like some trees?
So one of those would be a better, R6 Mark II with a, oh, Jack, so those two. It just depends on whether you get less
Claudia, perdón, ¿tú tienes el DJI Mic?
El segundo no.
¿Cómo el segundo? ¿Tú le diste uno a él, se lo pusiste al
tenía el
video?
otro. Se lo dio Jorge en la mano.
A Jorge. Ok, Al tenía el otro y se lo dio a Jorge en la
Sí,
mano.
porque David Berman cuando fue para atrás se lo quitó y se lo dio a él. Por eso se lo quitó y se lo dio a él. Y cuando le fui a poner ese,
Good, man. We're good. This way. Yes.
They're both 200 off. Yeah, they're both the same discount. That one's $35. Yeah. $200 off. Brings down to $3,400 for the good ones. Yeah, the better ones.
oh, she.
No, the Canon sets those prices. So these are. Rocco, sube. I'm sorry. Sube. We were looking at the wrong side. This is for 5 days only. So March 3rd, today through the 7th.
Oh, very nice.
So it is actually.
En la noche.
Yes. Yes, there's an extra $300 on both of them. You got the original two we saw on the other side, but then you get another 300. Yes, there's 2,300 for.
Sí, el acceso.
With the good ones. Let me find that video.
Right. No, así. Me paré primero así.
Let me see where he went, but we'll get you squared away.
Pero me quedé en la cama que si dando mil vueltas y por ahí. Me tomé dos tequilas, veces, luego, y tú sabes,
Real quick.
Yeah, I've seen them
So
before.
you've seen that, right? But it's a D2. He was using a D2. It's a flat front, right? Right. So, you know, is anybody going to say, "Oh, are you sure that's not the?"
No, that's it. That's it.
So that's how I'm going to show you. Right.
I did some, oh, I used to set up shit on. Like, I can tell you, one night and then from.
Sure.
Or not.
They do, yes. Yeah, yeah, they do, they have. But we don't sell anything here. Store does. All this stuff, this work I have. So I came in, so that's why he's helping you. Yeah, that's awesome. He's looking to see, yeah, he's looking to see. Yeah.
Okay. We got next to you. Yep. Of course. I know something about that. It's just like not great. It's all right. Feel like we gotta do the same thing. I think what's next to mine to ask questions. Oh, that's cute. Oh, that's. Inside. That's perfect. Oh. Wow, that's great. Yeah. Of course.
So they got what focuses on generar consumir.
Yeah, no problem. Honestly, it would be a third party. Yeah, it would be a third party. And whoever responds, yes, okay, is
Mira,
Mira, el señor de la ciudad.
Ah, yo así con la
Siempre está como diciendo. Yo no sé si Doral le interesa.
No sé si
Y él no le interesa hablar, tío.
No, yo no sé por qué. No se apene. No se apene. Really? Were you for
I won't trouble. At some point you do, and then you restore the video.
Okay, I was there.
But I had to commit to Miami as soon as the price was.
Yeah, I tried out on. So you're good.
Wow.
It's right at that point.
Anytime I put the camera down,
Yeah, to me, that's good to find out.
may I get? Yeah.
It's a lens on you to do what I'm gonna do, so.
All right, let me go get that.
Okay, sounds good. Larry's.
Okay. That's where I'm going next, actually. Gotcha.
It wasn't.
Vamos a la para que no estemos molestando aquí mucho. We're gonna go get something in the car, Rafa. No,
We all have to.
how many of these do you want
Wow.
How long have you been in force?
That's why I'm
Really? That shot yesterday was this kid from
Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
No, actually, that's about an hour.
No sé si acuérdense que con los pasados, ¿verdad? 2 hours. That would do it. Yeah, I've been all my life. What 2 months? February. No, January and February. Well, that would definitely. Yeah, that scares me away.
Ah, ok, claro.
Creo que no haya dejado nada.
I mean, it was so silent. Like, there was no sound.
Yeah, that's.
We're
back to
and then when I want to go somewhere in the car, it doesn't start.
That's why I used to avoid it.
Ha sentido.
Bueno,
En la escuela. Ya, me pone de nuevo uniendo con la escuela.
That's scary.
Pero.
How is it? Good?
I can't find stuff at full time.
El otro día trabajó la media. CEO de Goldman Sachs. Ahí te echaba uno, dice que había como 2 trillones. Armando.
I would too.
Drop names.
My life.
Well, that, no wonder. How's he eating? Uber or?
Just drive.
Oh, he's driving, right. The other guys?
They took me out. I like
Oh, they
that.
took Uber? They left?
Yeah, that's what I like about.
I'm sorry.
I would say thank you.
So.
No, they're good.
Good.
They were excited. They wanted to go to my.
Oh. They want to go, so tourists.
Yeah, they wanted to go do some touristy stuff, so they went to the hotel on their which is the furthest away from my mind, so.
I agree.
We were split, so.
Completely agree.
Elevation around 2,000.
Got it.
So we didn't get snow.
Wow.
Daniel, y ese libro es el de él, ¿no? Buenísimo. Dígalo yo mismo ahí.
Yeah, so I enjoy skiing and all that stuff.
He just went to the restroom.
If I was at the beach. Yeah, Tahoe. I heard they got 4 foot of snow. Yeah, crazy.
It's very easy.
That's crazy. That's not unusual, bro. I mean, I remember. February.
She's independent.
Rocco, ven, sube. Rocco, sube. 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 Rocky, Rocco.
Rocco.
Makes up for it.
Siéntate.
Míralo como te vea.
Braco.
Braco.
Cómetelo.
No, pero él habla en italiano, háblale en italiano. No, háblale en italiano.
Dice, pero ya, dice, yo ya tengo suegra. ¿A cuál de las mujeres?
Háblale en italiano para ver. Venía qua. Venía qua.
No.
Don't be there, Rocco, don't be there.
Wow.
You know, I squat.
Oh, yeah.
Sube, andiamo, sube. Sí.
Oh, wow. That's so bizarre.
So the story is grow anything.
Of course, right?
Yeah. All over the year.
You don't know because you had to go.
That's incredible.
We have both individual.
Then I'm like,
There might not even be a discount. For 6 months to 24
Nice.
Well, I mean, no, it's kind of to begin with.
I'm bringing the big guy.
Yeah, there you go.
Here you go.
Yeah. I just gotta figure out how to keep the process.
What is it?
I'll find it. They're gonna have the. Right, we have a house, I built a house out there. They're there and that's why. So the town's only like 2,000. So they had fire. Probably a few, maybe 3,000 now.
Still.
I had like 500.
Puerto Rico.
Mine too.
Yeah, so like 3,000.
Yeah. Everybody's house is like.
Alright, so
Yes.
So it's focusing fine. It is circling back and forth.
It's a big picture. It's like, almost 2 of these. So that big. No, this is pretty square. So this is. Oh, yeah. Why?
Can I put it on service? Because that service.
Yeah, I'm gonna be maybe see, yeah, right, it sounds good. Yeah, you got, that's a great deal. That's gonna be a lot. You're looking Oh, yeah, yeah. So with the app, you can download the app.
Claudia.
Sí, se acaba de ir, se expiró. Está adentro con una red. Está
You look over here, right? Right this way. The DI facing next to it.
You got it. Yeah. Okay. 116.
Yep.
1 2 1 2 1 2 3. Testing 1 1 1 2. Rain. Safe manual on the plane. There you go. 1 2 3.
Yo agarré el otro.
Thank you for staying around. We're gonna have Candace Margot, and then we're gonna do the wrap. Candace worked with me at Railroad Apparel for many years, and feel surprised when and now she does a lot of filmmaking and producing and documentary work. Candace Margot.
I want to tell you a little bit about how I got where I am. I approached this, I'm approaching this as a workshop. So I had originally asked for people to submit their samples of their work, because I really wanted to talk about your work. So we have one participant who got some work into me. What I wanted to do was really kind of break it down and take a look at what you're working on and the projects that you're working on. So if you have a website, and if you have motion work, some people like to call it video, if you have video work that you can look at, then we'll bring it up. You know, we can bring it up and we can look at your website, we can break down some of your pieces and why they're strong and how to improve your work. That was really the point of this workshop. The point of this workshop really is about what is the right gear. Can you start the lights down a little bit?
What? Oh, yeah.
Am I loud enough? Can you hear me in the back?
You're not recording though, right? Does that work? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the most important takeaways for me is to talk to you about the right gear and why, because a lot of you are still photographers and you're making this transition into motion, what I'm going to call motion. Let me explain why I call it motion. How many of you have like older family members who post video on social media? Only one? Well, I have a real prejudice about the difference between the work that we put into our work as creatives and what my grandmother can put on social media. No offense to my grandma. But I really don't feel like if I spend the time to labor over something, and if you are doing any kind of video, you know how labor intensive it is. It's not something you want to go around. I think we need to change the lexicon. That's my point. We need to call ourselves cinematographers. We need to call ourselves filmmakers, and we need to take credit for the hard work that goes beyond it. It isn't just a 30-second, motion. You're doing video and you're posting it on the internet. That's video. But you guys, as talented people, as creative, I would like for you to take away from this workshop is to change the way you think about yourself and the work that you're creating. You're creating short films. You're creating short pieces that are motion pieces, and they have story behind them, okay? And so one of the things we'll start off with, because we're in this beautiful store, and I want to thank Tino and all of his people here. This is a really incredible place. I have never been here before yesterday. This place, I was telling Mr. Tino, and I genuinely mean it, there's no place like this that I know of in probably the 3 counties. Very unique. It's like a mini New York store, I'm a geek. I like gear a lot. I like gear because it makes me better at what I do. I don't like gear for gear's sake. I have a saying, all the gear and no idea. I don't have that. I like to have all the gear and an idea. So, but there is some validity to having the right equipment,
Because if you don't have the right equipment, it's fighting you. And if it's fighting you, then you're paying more attention to the equipment than you are telling the story. I will also tell you that I believe in making your work better, that it always comes back to story. It will always come back to story. And I'm going to show you some commercial pieces today. So let me tell you a little bit about my background. I'm not a commercial photographer. We'll go through my background a little bit. But I don't care if it's a product, if it's a fashion, documentary, feature-length film, feature-length documentary, everything comes back to story. So how do we make your stuff better? Make you better storytellers. You're already storytellers. The thing is, the way I've been saying this for a long, long time. I transitioned at the Miami Herald. So we'll go into a little bit. So we're going to talk about these things: story and story structure, cinematography, sound, and editing. Not much. So this is me. This is the gear I'm currently using. It's a lot different than the stuff I used to carry as a still photographer. All right. I have something called the Ergo Rig, which I want you guys to know about here at the store. Ergo Rig, really nice device. Because the way it works as I am a documentary filmmaker. So what happened was I did 21 years at the Miami Herald. So I think I'm a veteran, okay? Of those 21 years, 18 years was spent behind a still camera. And then the internet took a lot of prominence to the work that we were doing at the paper, and they asked for volunteers. And Chuck Fadley, who was here earlier, myself, Battle Vaughn, and Ricardo Lopez, we started what was called then the Visual Journalism Department. And we started doing multimedia, what they call multimedia producing. And I became the video editor, and we were going out, and we had no training. We were bought nice equipment and said it was, it was a Sony camcorder. And they said, I just remember one of my editors came in and said, I need your still cameras back. And I went, Mr. Winston. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. Do you want my still cameras? And he said, yeah, I want your still cameras because you're going to use this stuff. And I had to teach myself how to do motion, like overnight. And what I discovered is I really sucked at it initially because I was being self-taught. I went to YouTube University, like most of us have graduated from. And I was really not satisfied. I thought, the work was actually getting better and better, and with the help of, we had a tight bond, the four of us, and we were really trying to get things off the ground and make quality work. And I wasn't sure what were the components of telling a story, which is why I'm here to share that with you today. But I quit the Miami Herald in 2009 voluntarily. There were about 6 rounds of layoffs, and they offered me money to leave, and I said, I'm gone. And I moved to New York. I mortgaged my Miami home for about $150,000. I had it paid off, and I mortgaged my home, and I moved to New York, and I put myself through an MFA program at the School of Visual Arts. I am a classically trained documentary filmmaker. That's how I identify. I honestly don't take very many photos anymore. That made me sad for a very long time. I got depressed. I went to therapy. I'm not kidding. I couldn't decide why I had done this transition. I didn't know why did I give up still photography to do this thing called motion. It was so weird, and I felt completely not good at it. And I was really lucky to go into a program that had, I chose this one program because it was 100% working professionals. There were no academic teachers. Everybody that taught there was working in the industry. And I thought, look, I'm 50 years old. I haven't got any time to go be academic and theoretical. I need to learn this. Now, I know most of you sitting here probably don't have the luxury of somebody supporting you and all of this other stuff, and you can just go off to grad school. So I didn't have the luxury, and it is true that those people were the first people to hire me. I worked for several of the faculty that worked there as a cinematographer when I graduated. So there was a lot of value in that, and I really love it now. What drew me to it was sound. So you can appreciate it, you're a musician. So you have beautiful photographs, but you know how we always take these beautiful photographs and we put music under them and we feel more emotional? Imagine putting words. And like some of you might have been here for Carol's piece on gun violence, and she had the radio sound. It was from the body cam of one of the police officers, and it was this very frantic voice calling for help and all of this other stuff, and it heightened our experience of those images. And that is what filmmaking is to me, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Adding sound to heighten your experience and to take you on a journey to another world, to have you experience another world. I don't care if you're doing, I don't care what you're doing. You can, I don't care what you're doing. If your role is to take me to another world, whether you're selling me a product, you're selling me music, whatever you've got, take me to another world. And we do that through imagery and sound, and we build that through imagery and sound. It's really cool. We are consumers of this every day, and as visual creatives, I would like for you to be more aware of what you could do to improve your work, to bring that sort of added value to it. So let me show you a little bit. I hate talking about myself. This is not about me. This workshop is not about me, but I'll show you some of my credentials. For those of you who don't know me, I work with Maggie Stieber. Maggie Stieber, who's up here, is responsible for the fact that I was a Pulitzer finalist. Without her, never would have happened. So filmmaking and photography is a collaborative thing. It doesn't happen solo. It's a support system that we create for ourselves. And this was a project that nobody else believed in. Maggie came in, it was the year Maggie got hired, and Mary Balbona and I had been working on this, and everybody was shooting it down. Mary got breast cancer. She's pretty vocal about it, and she came to me. She actually started it before me. We were both working in that area, Liberty City, as sort of our beat. But she came to me and she said, look, I'm going to have, massive surgery. I can't do it. She pulled me in, and she started it, and I kind of finished it. And it ran in the Miami Herald. It has to run in the Miami Herald. It has to be published in order to be eligible for prizes of any kind. And it was a beautiful project. I was really honored to work with Mary and the writer. I would just go out and hang out in these places and capture some of the life. It was a story about a renaissance, a tiny little bit of a renaissance that was happening in this part of a very impoverished part of Miami that had been the center of a lot of drug wars, and nothing good ever seemed to happen there. But we noticed that the fathers were getting together, contrary to the stereotypes, and they were helping the mothers take back the streets. And they were riding bicycle, security in the neighborhood, and telling people to get off the streets and dealing with the drug dealers that were in their neighborhood. This was a guy that I just stopped and hung out with a little bit. He and his girlfriend were smoking crack. That was one of the big problems in the neighborhood, was crack cocaine. They were just living in a box, basically, in Liberty City. just some of the stuff that went with that project. I don't know, we worked on it for like 6 months or something like that. It wasn't a super long project. This was the family, I actually embedded with this family, lovely family. I stayed in their apartment in Liberty City. And one day when I was not there, we got a call that said the boyfriend of the woman that I was staying with had just stabbed her several times. And we ran over there, and we actually got there before the paramedics because we had built a relationship. So we heard a lot about building relationships over the last 48 hours. I'm inside the grandmother's home. I mean, we show up and she goes, come in, come in, come in, come in, you know, and I'm there, and this little boy saw it. He was there, that was his mom. And he took the 1-year-old and he scrambled under the bed while his mother was being attacked. And the value of building relationships is they actually want you there to tell their story. It's not exploitative. It's because they want their story told. It's because they don't want this stuff to continue to happen in their neighborhood. This is the mom beforehand. That's where I was staying, just sort of hanging out at night. A couple of the kids from the house. They were trying, the mothers were trying to make change down at City Hall. Police officer, sergeant who refused to leave the neighborhood, raised his family there, and this is the spot where his son was killed. And he's holding a picture of his son. And this is a woman who made it all possible for us to be there. She was really helpful in helping us tell the right and accurate story. She was in the substation. So then a drive-by shooting, Rakia Isaac, which was a very well-known story at the time. This is her uncle, who was a pastor, who would go and pray at her gravesite every Sunday, and I went with him and took that shot. So, I mean, I had some time behind the camera telling stories. And then as part of, you know, establishing myself as a filmmaker, I made a feature-length documentary of 73 minutes long. And I wanted to do a story on the decline of the middle class. If you think about that, that's a pretty amazingly boring story. And I couldn't think of how to tell the story, but the middle class in 2008 was getting really decimated. And I wanted to tell a story about it. So I started doing research, and I found a hip hop artist who lived in Detroit, and I knew that Detroit was a really visual place, that there were 78,000 abandoned buildings in Detroit in 2010. And there were allegedly 55,000 abandoned dogs. So I heard this report on NBC. Kevin Tibble reported this story about these 55,000 dogs running rampant through Detroit. And I said, well, hey, that's visual. You know, I can make a story out of 55,000 dogs that have been abandoned. And they were abandoned because people literally, it was like in 1936, like during the Great Depression, when people just left their homes. Like they walked out the door, and whatever they had in their car is what they took with them. Literally, you could walk through house after house after house after house with the front doors open, and the graduation pictures were still on the wall. The baby books were left behind. I mean, it was heart-wrenching. And they were coming in, and of course they were ripping out the copper because there were copper thieves and stuff like this. So this is the opening scene to my film. The thing about the hip hop artist was he decided as a Detroiter that he wanted to start rescuing dogs. So he got his band and they started rescuing dogs. And I thought, okay, so you've got music that I don't have to copyright. I've got music, a good music, great characters and a story. I'm gonna go make a film. And it's gonna talk about all of the abandoned buildings. The dogs became a metaphor for the abandoned, abused, and neglected middle class. That was the idea. So when you're thinking about a story, sometimes you don't want to be right on the nose about it. Like I could have gone and done a frontline piece of, here are, 87,000 abandoned buildings and $55,000 like Kevin Tibble did, right? And it's gone in a second and then what? We don't care. So I went out there and let me tell you that the other thing that I will say about video or motion work is it's entirely an emotional medium. And let me tell you, the people who are really good at doing this stuff are really good at using emotion to get you to buy stuff, to get you to watch stuff, to get you to do stuff. It's really about emotion. Here he is, I mentioned you. This is Chuck Fadley. We started this visual journalism department with, well, Chuck was the head. So anyway, this is just the opening scene. I'll set it up just a little bit. What I did was I was very poor. I was living in New York. I was flying back and forth to Detroit. I used all my own money, about $30,000. I produced, directed, shot, did the sound, and edited this film by myself. I would highly recommend that you never do this, okay? For many reasons. One is don't go broke. And secondly, oh my God, the amount of work of doing a feature-length documentary on your own money, on your own time. Tremendous amount of work. I did it in 2 years. I only shot in the winter, so I wouldn't have to do any LUTs or color correction, not much color correction because it's really dreary. The idea is, again, the metaphor is it's bad out there, right? So I went, these are two characters, Melanie and Rodney, and they were supposed to call me every time they had a rescue. So I get this call, I happen to be in town, I go over there, and it's a big dog. They say it's a big dog. It's gonna be interesting, it's gonna be hard to capture. They did this because some of the dogs get aggressive, they turn wild again, and they start to attack little kids and people. So they were trying to catch this dog, and it completely went in a direction that was completely unanticipated, and this is it. I think it's gonna come on. Oh, no. Let me see. Come on. What? There it is. Yeah, let me go back. Sorry, guys. Trying to figure out the technology here. The question is, will it have sound? There's no sound. Is there a reason there's no sound? Is it this thing? Is this it? Yeah, okay. All right. I don't think I can start it from the beginning. Let's start it again. Okay.
Did you see that shit? Did you see that shit? Hey, listen.
tired. You're tired. You're tired. You're tired. Tired. Just hold your hands out. See what I'm in the yard. Oh, motherfucker! Get him now, get him now. Oh, it's too slick. Oh, Bandit, it's open. Get the net, get the net, get the net. He went through it. He saw everything. Stop. He stopped. Where is it? There you are. Shit. Oh, we was in that excursion. This shit would not be happening. There we go. There we go. There he is. Oh shit. Oh boy. Damn, damn. Okay. Okay. He's coming back. He's around. There's a hole right here. There's a hole right here. Yeah. What the fuck?
I guess I should tell you Detroiters cuss a lot. But a very exciting thing, I didn't have a gimbal. I tried to put warp stabilization on it and all kinds of, you know what? I started to decide it was what really happened. It added to the kinetic moment. You hear how clear the sound is on the people? So Rodney, no problem, put a mic on him every day. He learned how to turn it off when he peed. You know, that's fine. Melanie was a fight every day. She said, no. That day, I don't know, it was like the filmmaking guys, and she just said, I don't want to do it. I said, just for this one rescue. And it was really boring at the beginning. Like, we were just in this park, walking around with the dog going back and forth. It wasn't anything. And then who knew they were going to chase him? Like, they'd never done this before. I'd been on several rescues with them. They decided to say that this dog was dangerous and they were going to chase him. It was so cool, you know. I'm in love. I was an 8-person ensemble cast. I followed 8 people around. I almost killed myself doing this stuff. But it was really exciting, and what I learned is just how much I love telling a story with sound. Like, I could have done a picture story on this, but how cool is it to have sound? You couldn't hear that motherfucker, right? Because that told you something about Rodney, right? His language, you know. Did you see that shit? You know, just like that, he's so into it, and his enthusiasm and his dedication to catch that dog was really palpable. It got picked up by Animal Planet. My people did. I was the executive producer. It was called Detroit Unleashed. It was a one-off, 1-hour show. They saw my documentary and it got headhunted, and they came out and we filmed again with Discovery. It was a 1-hour program, and it ran about a year after I screened the film. I haven't got the film out because only because the music rights are in the tens of thousands of dollars, and I haven't had a composer to do it, and it's a lot of it. I just ran out of money. And but then I thought, well, it's cool because we had Discovery come in and do something with it, so that was really cool. I then went on to continue work in New York, and I worked on a bunch of PBS stuff. This next one was, it's, Half the Sky, A Path Appears was, it's a story about women. Nick Kristof from the New York Times wrote a book with his wife on sex trafficking and, just what happens to young women in a lot of different countries. And I was privileged enough to be one of the cinematographers that was brought on to the project to work on it domestically. They traveled all over the world, but I did some domestic stuff for the project. Remember, I'm still pretty green. I'm still getting, I've only been out of grad school for a year, but I feel really lucky that I'm getting pulled in on some really good projects. And I think that has to do with dedication and attitude and just showing up and, just being there and people recognizing it. So the producer for this, Mauro Chineroff, she owns a production company. She was the dean of the department at the school where I went and got my MFA, so she saw my work. She said, let's use it. So I've gotten a bit of work from Mauro, and like I said, it's all about networking. If you look for my motion stuff online, you won't see very much. Why? Because I don't own it. I don't own my work. I'm just a work for hire. And unlike photography, everything I do, I don't have any copyright to. No, nothing.
Unless it's an original.
I do to Detroit Dog City. Detroit Dog City I own, but I financed it, so it's mine. But when you get hired in the video world or the motion world, filmmaking, I'll call it, you sign a deal memo and it says none of it's yours. You also sign an NDA. Like right now, I have a film opening in the Miami Film Festival in a month. I can't even tell you guys about it because I'm on an NDA, and I looked for it and it's not been announced yet, so I can't tell you about things until they're announced.
Will you explain what an NDA is?
Oh,
just in case?
Non-disclosure agreement. An NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. You sign it at the beginning of every project you work on as a cinematographer because these are long-term projects that you work on over months or years. And so the first thing that happens is you sign an NDA and you can't talk about it. And you can't post anything. So how do I feel about that? I feel so lucky to be working with talented people. If they want to hide my name in the credits, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. My name is on the credits somewhere. It's okay. I just want to be working. I just want to be telling stories. So this was one little scene out of this. It was in Atlanta, I think. Story is domestic abuse. This woman keeps getting beat up by her husband. Nick Kristof is in this one. We were going around with Nick that day, and he interviews her in this little piece here.
He went to the house, beat her, battered her in front of the kids. She called 911.
The playback's a little weird. Sorry, guys. It's not usually so jumpy.
There was a visible mark left on her, so the police had enough to take out the warrant.
He is 6'1", 241 pounds. Sheriff Office. How you doing?
Man, he just pushed me. I said, I just see backlight grab me. Then backlight hit slow, and that's backlight.
That's Nick.
So you're saying that you called him sick?
No.
Is your relationship with him over, or is it? What is the status of it?
I mean, we don't get down just close the leg up. I mean, I don't think it has to do with me.
You had him twice before you, I mean, you had him once
Once
before.
before, yes.
So why wouldn't you have that third time?
This time, I was just wondering.
He drew me in pretty quickly and things started to change after a while. got very possessive and controlling. As I started having a baby, things just got worse and worse and worse. Every discussion turned into an argument, and then it started becoming physically abusive.
One gauge of total domestic violence. Between 2000 and 2006, we had 3,200 Americans who died at war in Afghanistan and Iraq. In that same period, we had more than 3 times that many who died as a result of domestic violence. You think of all the headlines we had about war, and we didn't have any real conversations or coverage of domestic violence.
So that's the kind of work that I do. I do nonfiction. I don't do any fiction. I don't like fiction really because you stand around a lot. It's very boring. And yeah, I'm just not good at standing around. And I like having a camera on my shoulder, and I like moving, and I like being right up in there and moving around and telling a story. I really like working on PBS pieces because they still do long form. So anytime I can get myself on one of those, I get myself on one of those. Yeah, what do we have next here? Oh, so the Overwatch project. So in 2013, former Miami Herald reporter and I, Casey Woods, started it's really her project. I want to preface that, but I worked for free for 10 years. So I'm going to take a piece of it, all right? I am what is called, she gave me the title visual lead. So I do the work for her. I have started to charge her. Yeah, I know, like a year ago. She actually has enough money now where she can actually pay me. This project is about veteran suicide. So I was really looking for something to sink my heart into. We all need to have personal projects. And, you know, we've heard the statistics, 22 a day, blah, blah, blah. And the government doesn't know how to bring those numbers down. And it also includes active service members, what you call, and people who are still in the Army or not the Army, the military. So we started off just doing veterans because we had no access to doing any active duty service members, which means you've got to go through a lot of red tape because you have to get into the bases. I will tell you, we are in the bases now. The government has actually agreed to let us do work inside, and I've been inside filming. I could have shown you another one. I've been inside filming the work that we're doing. So basically, this is a apolitical. This is an apolitical project that is trying to talk about the fact that of the 100% of suicides by veterans, about 72% of them are accomplished through firearms. So if you start talking about, well, their access to having a firearm at a very critical moment, then that can bring the numbers down. So basically, how many people here have heard of Friends Don't Let Friends Drive Drunk? All right, how many of you have heard about taking the keys away from a friend when they're drinking too much and not letting them drive? Get an Uber. Okay. This is the firearms version of that. So if you have a battle buddy, so you're usually, veterans are very good at staying in touch with other veterans. They form bonds. So you're supposed to be able to start conversations with your battle buddy about whether they're in crisis or not. And if they're in crisis, come up with a plan to remove the most lethal method of killing yourself out of easy reach. It takes usually about 10 minutes or less for someone to decide to kill themselves. That's statistically proven. Like, it's called, excuse me, can I use bad language in here? Yes. It's called the fuck it moment. And they're in it, and then there's fuck it. All right, so, but when they're in it, your battle buddies or your spouse or somebody you know, is noticing changes, something. We actually work with law enforcement too. We started in Boston in law enforcement. But that law enforcement thing's kind of tough because it's too spread out. So this is a piece that lands on the webpage. I'll also show you the webpage.
This is the proving ground, where the strength of our bonds is tested in the heat of battle, where victory is achieved when no fighter is left behind. Now, a new war rages at home. The weapons in this war are different. They're a call, a question, an extended hand, a voice that cuts through the darkness and says, I'm here for you. As ordinary people become heroes and save lives. While the enemy is strong, it stands no chance against an unbreakable bond. This is the war on suicide. Never back down, never surrender, because the war is on.
So that piece there was produced probably for as little as maybe $15,000. A piece like that normally would be about $300,000 to produce a promo piece like that. But those were real veterans who donated their time. The site, which is out in California, which is meant to look like an Iraq place, was donated by the people, which would have been like $1 million a day. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of volunteering for when you're a nonprofit, you can get people to volunteer for you. So the actual site, which I would like to print a little here, guys, just because I'd like you guys to know, there is a site here. If you love someone who's served or you know anybody in crisis, it also works for the regular folk. This is our call to action. We're not messing around. All right. So we came up with this because we interviewed hundreds of veterans, because Casey's such a good she's such a good journalist. We did hundreds of veterans around the United States, and we say, well, for those of you who did not manage to kill yourself, what happened? Somebody intervened. And so we talked to the person that intervened, and they said, well, how did you get them to not kill themselves? And we said, I just fucking asked about their weapons. So it's like, yes, it's very vulgar, but when we went to go do the vanilla version of this, and we presented it to the veterans, they said, nobody's going to take you seriously. This is how we talk. This is what we do. So the photography, all of this stuff is, I did not do those stills. Those were done by an LA photographer who donated his time. These are mine. So we get a hold of veterans who have survived a suicide attempt, and we get them to talk about it. And we do little films. The first two are like testimonials. That one there is actually like an 8-minute film. So this is what I've been doing with Casey to just kind of make my life have a little bit more meaning. There's a lot of layers to it. We have, lots of resources for them to come to. We've spent a lot of time on the visuals in trying to get this stuff out into social media. So we're not just, Maggie and I were just talking, we're not just one thing. We're not just photographers. We're not just filmmakers. We're not just one thing. So you can think about something you're passionate about. Maybe, you know, hey, once I've met you, if you want me to talk to you about your film ideas, I'll talk to you about your film ideas. I could talk film all day long. So, let me just close this. So yeah, we do stuff that we really care about. And this is, you know, started in journalism and I've been moving across this field. So this is my question to you. Who are your clients? Are you doing commercial work, which would be like food and fashion and product? Are you doing nonfiction, documentaries, nonprofit, GNO, editorial, personal passion projects? I don't have music videos down here, Alexander, but personal passion projects. All of these, as diverse as they are successful when you apply story to them. So that whole Overwatch project, there's a huge story behind it. It's about battle buddies. It's about being there for your battle buddy. It's about just fucking ass. Yeah.
Can I just ask, I hate to interrupt you, but that slow-mo, section you had of the soldiers.
Yeah.
Is that you who shot that?
I was the visual lead, but it's a big crew. It's a big LA crew. A production company called Rocket Media. The camera person had what's called a phantom camera. I was more like the director, I guess you would say. But that took a lot to put together. It's a very collaborative thing. It's not that, that's not a solo thing. That's like many people, like dozens of people involved in that. And again, like I said, like the original estimate was probably, you know, like stupid money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we did it for like 15 or 20. Crazy. Like we did have to rent a Phantom. Nobody's gonna give you that, you know. Because I don't know what those are. Ask Tina. They're probably like $2,500 a day, something like that for the camera. Plus insurance. Lots of insurance. But I'm very proud of the piece. I think it turned out really beautiful and it really draws people in. Very successful. And again, it's not classic journalism. It's in this area right here, but then it's also kind of almost like fundraising, promotional. So that's why I kind of feel like I move around in all of these spaces now because I work with people. I have one person I'm working with who's a product photographer, and I'm doing video with them now and telling story because he wants to bring story to his products. And his clients are now asking, this is something I will tell you, clients are asking for video now. They're asking for video. I hate that they call it video, as you know, but they're asking for little baby short films. I try to educate them. I say, they're really films, you know, they're films. They might be 30 seconds, but they're films. They're 30-second films. So who has projects out here? Anybody? I know you do. We have a musician in our midst. So you're doing music videos and you want to just, you know, get your game up a little bit, bring something new to it.
Yeah, so I'm a musician for
Yeah.
And so, I mean, music typically has music videos if you don't know. So kind of where I'm at is.
This is who's talking to you right now. Yeah.
And so we have started taking on our own short music videos, like cover music and our because we are students of YouTube and all the weather and everything we have is kind of on pause and stuff. Like taping my phone and seeing.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Because look at what I'm gonna talk about next. She segued me. Yeah, so, yeah, it's kind of like taping your phone to things and trying to get the right angle. And so here's what I will say. Know your target audience. Know your client. Determine your professional or personal focus will determine the type of projects you'll work on, which will in turn determine your ideal gear. So I've asked Tino and family to set up some stuff that we'll look at, anything from affordable to maybe a little bit more in the expensive department, but you get to look at it today. You know, we can go and just hover around it and take a look at it. So we're gonna be looking at different gear. The question is, the age-old question for filmmakers, do I wanna buy it or do I wanna rent it? Because some stuff, like that Phantom, you would never buy it. Can't afford it. Way too expensive. Do you know how much it is? How much is a Phantom, guys?
It depends. There's like 5 different types.
Yeah, it's like 65,000,
Depends
70,000.
Somewhere around, basically, somewhere around 60%.
Yeah, like $65,000. You're not gonna buy that camera to do that one little piece that I did. Yeah.
I'm looking at all these kinds of up here. I'll tell you, interesting that when they were starting out with videos, we actually take 2 or 3 of them, set a video, set them in different angles, and then have one moving camera, and then you actually edit it.
A filmmaker.
Well, for the cost, you know,
Right.
you can get 4 cameras running for very little money.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, work.
Right. A music video is its own genre. I'm gonna tell you flat out, like, that's not my jam. I've never done it. It's too hard. Now I will. Now I have to try it. But buy or rent. So it really is a question of money, you know. And I will tell you that I looked at their rental list here that Tino has up here. They've got a lot of nice stuff to rent. So if you wanted to play, it's like renting a car. If you just going to buy a car, you might go rent it first. I would encourage you guys to rent some gear and try stuff, you know, because it's an individual sort of thing. When I've worked on projects, so, okay, I own my own gear, and I rent it to whatever production company I am hired for. So my gear makes more money than I do typically, okay? Especially in the documentary field, I don't make a lot of money. I have a creative day rate, and it's a 12-hour day, and if you start breaking that down, that's not enough money. But my gear makes money. So I decided I'm just going to invest in all this really good professional equipment and rent it to whoever hires me. That works unless you work for Netflix or somebody like that, which they provide, in my experience, they have provided the gear that I've used whenever I've had to work for a company like that. Because they have a thing going where they have their own production companies that are renting out the gear they negotiate that in the beginning budget, and they say, okay, Elevated Post is our production company. They're going to supply this particular production with all the gear to like 5 cinematographers working around the United States or whatever. But I do think that a lot of times it's good to own gear, and my personal preference is to own gear because I got that hung over from when I was a still photographer. I really like to know my gear. Like I've been watching Carol all day yesterday. She doesn't like let the camera out of her hand the whole time. Like you have to almost live with your gear to get so good at it. If you're uncomfortable with your equipment, your work generally reflects that, and it's really hard to hide motion work that's bad. You can't just eliminate one picture and just show the good stuff. When you're doing motion, if you're not comfortable with the gear and you're not doing well with it, it's gonna show. It's not gonna be hidden. You got 24 frames a second of really bad stuff instead of one frame. You know, so you can't hide it too much. So quality cameras and lenses, I think we have some stuff set up. We're going to talk about some accessories, how not to go broke. Sound is the second half of the picture. I noticed that there's not a lot of discussion about audio, and these little devices are okay. But good audio is really as important as a good photo, a good image rather, as anything else. So you've got it made, you have good audio. But the audience will tolerate bad imagery before they will tolerate bad audio. So you must have good audio. So I would encourage you guys to get really good. If you're going to dabble in motion, then you get some really cool little microphones like these and use them, depending on your project. But if you're going to do nonfiction work, you've got to invest in some decent audio stuff. Yeah.
I just finished doing editing of interview with Texas and actually my son I'm helping him out on a project, and the audio is the hardest part, because even though he had a lapel mic on the detector, I dragged the clips into Premiere, I started getting a buzz, a buzzing sound. I said, well, maybe it's my mic, maybe switch mics and give my son another mic. So I gave, when I was putting the mic on him, the buzzing sound was still there. I don't know if that has to do with the camera, but it was like the audio was. Yeah, it was a hum. It was like
You can actually, if you have problems with it, you can actually put it in Logic and it will increase.
Yeah, now we have AI, but you got to be careful where your cell phones are. I have them take, like when I'm interviewing people, I have them take them out of their pockets and move them away, because you just never know. I have I rent myself out, because as a filmmaker, you got to do everything. So I rent myself out as a sound person, I rent myself out as a producer, I rent myself out as a cinematographer, because there's never enough money. And as freelancers, you all know this, there's never enough jobs. So I've done, been a sound recordist, I've done everything. Sound is the hardest thing to do well. It is the most challenging, and it is the most unforgiving. And that's why you see people walking around with boom poles. And photography can be, this is the example I use. Photography, you are a hunter. You are hunting. You're hunting for 1/1000th of a second, or whatever it is you're looking for. It is a tiny, tiny little fraction of time in this whole big thing. As a filmmaker, you are a gatherer. So hunter, gatherer. Why? Because you don't get it. It's just the beginning. It's just the beginning of filmmaking. So you have to have a different personality to do it consistently, okay? Because that was the transition I made from hunter to gatherer, and I didn't like the gathering part. I wanted the satisfaction of looking on the back of my camera and saying, oh, that's pretty cool, I did well, right? That was stolen from me in filmmaking. I don't ever have that now. Even if I play back the clip in my thing, I haven't seen the finished product. So think of it like this. You want to bake a beautiful cake, what do you got to do first?
Give me the ingredients.
Got a recipe. Okay, I got a recipe. Then you go to the store and you do what Maggie said. You buy all the ingredients. Then you bring it home. Then you mix it. Then you bake it. Then you get it out and let it cool. And then you can have some cake. If you don't have patience, filmmaking is very hard on people. Okay, so I like cake. All right, I don't mind that it's already made cookie. All right, I don't mind making cake because the payoff is so enormously rewarding when it comes together and it's good. And it makes impact and it has a presence in the world. It's its own thing now, right? I mean, I clearly have a passion for it. I love it. But that's called pre-production, production, and post-production. Pre-production, recipe. Production, go to the store. Post-production, bake it. That's what you just did. Yeah.
Video like you're just like shooting with Sony or with a Red or with or a Canon.
All right, so we're going to talk about cameras because that's what makes it look like film. Okay. In some ways. So 90% of the cameras that you're going to use on a Netflix program is going to have to be a Netflix approved camera. Why do you even care about this? You're not going to work for Netflix. All right? Or maybe you will. I mean, if you're lucky, you do because they pay really well. But why do you care? Because it's called an industry standard. Somebody sets the standard for the industry. Why? Because if you really want to know, like, sorry, what just happened? All right. If you really want to know, I was going to try to look at my presenter notes, but they're not coming up. Let me see if I can get that to work. Hold on. Because I wrote it down here. Has to do with, okay, capture requirements. Resolution. Has to be a minimum of 4K. Kodak, uncompressed RAW or 422 chroma subsampling, bit depth, 10 bit or more, data rate, color space, transfer functions, like, what is all that? What that is it tells you how good it's going to look. So we're going to talk about cameras. I had them set up some cameras because some of them, like, let's talk about the Blackmagic. I love the little Blackmagic 6K pocket camera. Such a cool little camera. It's affordable. Why is it not on the list? So let's look at some of the ones that are on the list. So you have a Canon R6 Mark II full frame mirrorless. It's not on the list. But the Canon C70 and the Canon 300 Mark III are. Is this a bad camera? Not at all. I shoot with it all the time. Love what it looks like. But it doesn't, behind the scenes, in the back end of it, it's not the same. It's not the same picture quality. And when you start to put a lot of camera footage together on the same timeline, it's going to start to look different. Because they're having different photographers. It's generally not one photographer shooting a Netflix thing, or even in the documentaries that I work on, I'm the Miami person, so they hire me to do the Miami stuff, or maybe I can fly to here or there, but then they're not going to fly me over to LA necessarily. They've got good LA cinematographers. Why would they fly me there? They put me up in the hotel and all that other stuff, right? Okay, we'll walk in there. I'll go over this real quick. Sony A7S III, awesome camera, full frame, which we love. Not on the list, but that doesn't mean you won't make good films with it. All right, but it's just something you should know, kind of as you're looking at renting or you're looking at buying, just what the standards are. Actually, Nikon, as far as I know, Nikon, I don't know that there are any on the list at all. Blackmagic, the Ursas, all the Ursas are on there. The 6Ks, that little pocket 6K, which is great for like podcasts, when you want to do like podcasts or what you guys are doing, will be just beautiful, have a beautiful product. if you're not gonna go pro and do this for a living, a lot of these cameras are just fine for what you wanna do. I would go with full frame though. If you're gonna do any of this, I would go with full frame. They probably aren't necessarily 10-bit, which is important in color space because you have to color correct and a lot of other stuff that happens. And I think we're getting better. I think we're setting up a red camera in there as well. That's when you start building a rig like the one I have. You have to build it out. Everything's a la carte. And expensive, thank you. And then there's things I really like. I mentioned these because these are some of my favorite things to use. The Ronin RS3 Pro Combo, that's what they call it here. It's basically a gimbal that will take a pretty heavy camera. You could get probably just about any of the ones I just mentioned, except for maybe the red on there. This is like this little transmitter thing that I have on here. The zoom, you need a field recorder, guys, if you're gonna do this. And Adamus, well, I'm getting old. So these little tiny screens on the back of the cameras, I can't see the little square that is the focus thing anymore. So I want a bigger one. So this makes my monitor bigger because you're not looking through the lens very often. If you remember the picture of me, I actually have a, what's called an EVF, electric viewfinder. And I like to be in the camera because I'm old school, but I'm gonna have to get away from that because I'm going small. Tina's gonna help me go small. We're gonna take that big rig off my shoulder and we're gonna go small. GoPro Hero, point of view action cameras are almost a must, I think, for filmmaking. I think you have to have a GoPro somewhere in your camera bag. There are so many times that you want to do a Dave Bergman and you can't necessarily put your big camera up somewhere. How fast is a GoPro? And it comes with all kinds of clamps. I could scale it up here, clamp a GoPro there and have it running in about like 2 minutes. To get Dave Bergman to go up there and do a remote, it would take like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes maybe. So it's a time saver. It's one of the most glorious things to see when you see some cool angle. Why did we love all of those things that Dave was showing us? It's because it's so different the way we see our world. You can add a drone in there if you want to. That is a point of view camera, a drone. So I think point of view cameras rock. I think you can actually cheat the GoPro into looking like a drone by putting it on a big selfie stick and just kind of hoisting it up there and making it look like there's cheap ways to get around this stuff. And they're really good at motion. So we're supposed to take a break and then we go in and look at this stuff. So we can filter in, and I'll take this. Okay, I take this with me. So take a bathroom break, yeah.
Just before, because we've seen advertisements on television about the new iPhones.
Oh, yes.
That people are using to make films. Can you just address that issue?
iPhones are pretty cool. I mean, they can be also used as point of view a lot of times. They're not Netflix approved, obviously. Which is one of the reasons I kind of brought that up to talk about industry standards. It really is, who are your clients? It really comes down to who your clients are. There have been commercials made on iPhones and they brag about being made on iPhones and they do really good quality. When you get as an editor, which I've done a lot of editing, I can tell you in the edit room, there's a lot of limitations on that footage. Yes.
The truth about shooting on an iPhone and making something on an iPhone is that you have a humongous crew behind you.
Thank you.
And you have a bunch of lights.
Thanks.
A super DP with you. They probably add a different lens, an adapter lens to the front of the lens of the iPhone, and then they make this huge commercial and they tell you, oh, it's an iPhone. Yeah, right.
That's good to know.
Tons of post-production.
Yeah, post-production, to clean it up, To clean the footage up, they do a lot of post-production, but he's right, it's not like you and me with an
It's just a
iPhone.
physical thing. The sensor is this big.
Right, okay, but that's good to know, that's why I wanted.
Yeah.
It's false advertising.
They are approved for iPhone commercials.
Yes, they are.
Who said they're
I said
approved for what?
that iPhone are approved for iPhone commercials.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Okay, that works. Thank you for the information. I have a obvious filmmaker in here. So.
Oh, yeah, I'm 35 years.
Okay, good. Well, come up here and teach the rest. I'm tired. So. Thank you for being really patient. Let's go play. And we'll finish the second half, if you can stick around for it, is about story and how to tell story. All right? If you can't, are you having a read? Okay, I'm showing you stuff when you're here or not. Okay, all right. My pleasure. Please. Yes. Thank you for coming. I love that. It informs the way you do your work. But it does, it makes your photography different, right? Yeah. That's cool. Hey, you saw me. Oh, really? Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I thought, but then, but the satellite was like. It doesn't have any signal. No signal on the jet, it's a blank out. But he was so surprised, the volume all the way up. That's what it is, that's what it is. No, that's exactly what it is. I mean, that's what the noise sounds like, I'm thinking it. Okay, switch off the mic. I just thought, like, mono mic, stereo mic, change. Noise was still there. So I had.
I don't know what it was, but I had some kind of. YouTube University just figured out. And then some guy goes, oh, you formed audition. 35 on this. The new version of Premiere has this thing where you can play audio. Little slider. It traces basically up. But I also but it is
I know.